If you like the story, you can support the author on Patreon. Link is in the description.
Chapter 31, The Eye in the Sky. The morning after the gritty, heavily rotated 1-0 FA Cup victory against Aston Villa, the atmosphere inside the Carrington executive wing was buzzing with corporate adrenaline. The January transfer window was in full swing, and Axiom Global partners were moving with the swift, ruthless precision of a Fortune 500 company executing a hostile takeover. Marcus Vail strolled into Alexander Vance's office just past 9 o'clock. He wore a heavy black club parka over his tracksuit, a steaming cup of green tea in one hand, and his familiar red tactical magnet in the other. He didn't knock. He simply wandered in, pushed the heavy oak door shut with his heel, and slumped into the plush leather guest chair. "Morning, Alex," Marcus said lazily, taking a slow sip of his tea. Vance, dressed in an immaculate charcoal suit, looked up from his multi-monitor setup. His expression was a mixture of exhaustion and reluctant amusement. "I fielded 3 calls from the Premier League media department yesterday," Vance sighed, rubbing his temples. Pause for applause. Insert standard smile here. "Really, Marcus?" Marcus offered a shrug, rolling the red magnet over his knuckles. "I did exactly what you told me to do. You told me to read the paper the PR department printed out. So, I read the paper." Vance let out a long, heavy breath, shaking his head. "I should have known better. I should have explicitly instructed them to remove the stage directions before handing it to you. You are a living nightmare for the marketing team." "They'll survive," Marcus smiled breezily. "I assume the fax machines have been busy." Vance's exasperation immediately vanished, replaced by a sharp smile. He was back in his element. "The winter ledger is practically closed, Marcus," Vance announced, tapping his keyboard to bring up the official club registry. "The outgoings are confirmed. West Ham United have officially finalised the permanent transfer of Jesse Lingard. £15 million into our accounts." Marcus flipped the red magnet over his knuckles, his eyes half closed. Good. He was a dedicated servant to this club since he was a boy, and he deserved to go somewhere he will actually play. West Ham is a good fit for him. We clear his wages, and he gets his minutes. 4. And the bigger departure is also complete, Vance added, gesturing to the television screen mounted on the office wall. The screen was muted, but it was currently playing a flashy, neon-drenched unveiling video on Paris Saint-Germain's official website. It featured sweeping drone shots of the Eiffel Tower, heavy editing cuts, and Paul Pogba standing in the center of the Parc des Princes, wearing the navy blue PSG kit, striking a dramatic pose for the cameras. Marcus watched the video for a few seconds, a faint, amused smile touching his lips. "A Hollywood production for a Hollywood player," Marcus murmured, looking away from the screen. "It suits him perfectly. We removed a massive distraction, and we took their £15 million before his contract expired in the summer. Flawless business. Which brings us to our incomings," Vance said, shifting the focus. "The medicals were completed late last night. The ink is dry. Manchester United will officially announce the double signing of Denis Zakaria and Bruno Guimaraes at noon today. $6 million for Zakaria, $42 million for Guimaraes. The midfield engine room you requested has been delivered." Marcus sat up slightly, pocketing the red magnet. The arrival of a true physical destroyer and an elite, press-resistant controller meant his mid-block formations finally had the exact personnel required to dictate the tempo against the best teams in Europe. "Excellent," Marcus nodded. "Get them into the training gear immediately. I want them on the grass with the squad by tomorrow. Now, what about the contingency plan up front? Did Juventus bite?" Vance's smile widened into a full grin. "They did more than bite, Marcus. They surrendered." Vance pulled up a confidential contract draft on his main monitor. "Juventus are desperate for liquidity to finalize their move for Fiorentina's Dusan Vlahovic," Vance explained, detailing the corporate leverage. "Paulo Dybala's contract expires in 6 months. They knew he was going to walk away for free in the summer. I offered them an immediate, take-it-or-leave-it cash sum of £18 million. They tried to haggle. I threatened to walk away and sign him on a pre-contract for July. They folded. 1. £18 million for Paulo Dybala, Marcus mused, letting out a soft, highly entertained chuckle. That is daylight robbery. When does he arrive? He is packing up his house in Turin, Vance confirmed. He will fly into Manchester in 1 week. He will be available for selection for the final fixtures of January. Brilliant, Marcus said, standing up from the leather chair and stretching his arms lazily. The squad is balanced. The passengers are gone. The tools are in place. Now, I just have to teach them how to use them. By noon, the synchronized media announcements hit the internet. Manchester United's official channels dropped the double confirmation of Guimarães and Zakaria holding up the red shirts at Old Trafford. Minutes later, the official confirmation of Lingard's departure to West Ham went live. The news of Dybala's impending arrival leaked to the top-tier journalists simultaneously. The digital football ecosystem instantly descended into absolute chaos. At Fabrizio Romano, here we go. Bruno Guimarães and Denis Zakaria are officially Manchester United players. Double midfield signing completed. And there's more, Juventus have accepted a £18 million bid for Paulo Dybala to join United next week. Axiom is moving with terrifying speed. Large red circle number MUFC. At David_Ornstein, confirmed. Paul Pogba's move to PSG is complete. Jesse Lingard joins West Ham permanently. Man Utd completely overhauling their midfield shape in a single window under Marcus Vale. At Mark Holdbridge, Zakaria, Guimarães, and Paulo freaking Dybala for £18m. I am on my knees. Marcus Vale has just executed the greatest January transfer window in the history of the Premier League. 1. At UTD Faithful, we sold a jogging Pogba for £15 million and bought an elite physical monster in Zakaria for £6 million. The business this club is doing right now is actually making me emotional. Loudly crying face. At PSG_English, a new king in Paris. Welcome, Paul Pogba. Crown. At the Man Utd way, that PSG unveiling video for Pogba is so cringe. So glad we don't do that Hollywood rubbish anymore. Vale just takes a photo of them holding the shirt and sends them straight to the training pitch. At AFC Gunner, United getting Bruno Guimarães is a disaster for the rest of the league. Arsenal have been tracking him for a year, and Axiom just sweeps in and buys him in 48 hours. Arteta must be fuming. At NUFC_Jordy, wait, we were supposed to sign Guimarães and Trippier. What is our board doing? Instead we're bidding £25 million for Chris Wood? United just robbed us. 3. At West Ham Views, welcome back, Jesse. He's going to be massive for us in the Europa League push. Glad United finally let him go. At Juventus FCEN, grazie, Paolo. A club legend departs for Manchester. Broken heart. At Statman Dave, Bruno Guimarães averaged 8.2 progressive passes per 90 in Ligue 1. He is the exact press-resistant controller United have lacked since Michael Carrick. A phenomenal tactical signing. At Chelsea transfer, Dybala, Ronaldo, Sancho, Rashford, Cavani, Greenwood. United's attacking depth is ridiculous now. If Vale can keep them all happy, they are a massive threat. At Rio 35, what a window. The midfield engine room is finally sorted. And Dybala for £18m. Absolute theft. The Glazers would have paid £80 million for him. Large red circle clapping hands sign. At City's N99, buying players won't help if the manager just parks the bus every week. City will still win the league. 1. At Tifo Football Paulo Dybala is the perfect false 9 for Marcus Vale's narrow 4-2-2-2. He operates flawlessly in the tight pockets of space. He can easily rotate with Donny van de Beek. At Stretford Paddock, Lingard to West Ham is sad to see, but necessary. He's a local lad, but Vale demands totally different profiles for his system. Best of luck to him. At Juve_News, selling Dybala for £18 million hurts, but at least we can finally close the Dusan Vlahovic deal. We need a proper number 9. At Fabrizio Romano, Dusan Vlahovic to Juventus is entering the final stages. The £60 million fee is almost agreed with Fiorentina following the Dybala sale to Man Utd. Medium white circle medium black circle 1. At Liam Paul Canning, we actually have a midfield that can pass the ball under pressure. I never thought I'd see the day. Guimarães is going to feed Ronaldo all season. At Red Evil 99, Axiom operates like a cartel. No leaks, no messing about. Just cold hard cash and instant medicals. Ed Woodward must be watching this from his sofa in tears. At Karl Anka, Vale clearing out the high-wage, low-output players and replacing them with tactical specialists shows total alignment between the manager and the board. At GGFN_, Denis Zakaria is a tank. He will let Bruno Fernandes push 15 yards higher up the pitch because Zakaria can cover the entire width of the midfield on his own. At Spurs official _fan, we are trying to sign Adama Traore and United just signed Guimarães and Dybala. Conte is going to walk out by February. At United stand Mufk, Dybala arrives next week. Can you imagine the link-up play between him, Sancho, and Ronaldo? The fluid movement is going to break defenses. At Opta Joe, 42, Bruno Guimarães completed 42 passes into the final third this season, more than any other midfielder in France. Maestro. At Philosophy, Trippier, Zakaria, Guimarães and Dybala signed for a combined £79 million. United's recruitment team has completely reinvented the squad for less than the price of one Harry Maguire. At the Man Utd way, I am officially dreaming of the Champions League. Marcus Vale is building a monster. While the digital world celebrated the transfers, the reality on the grass at Carrington was far more demanding. Thursday afternoon brought a heavy, freezing mist that clung to the training pitches. The squad, buoyed by the arrival of the new signings and the recent string of victories, jogged out of the main complex to begin their tactical session. However, as they stepped onto pitch 1, the players stopped in their tracks, staring at the center of the field in sheer bewilderment. Parked exactly on the halfway line was a massive, industrial cherry picker, a heavy-duty mechanical scissor lift with thick, treaded tires and a towering hydraulic arm. The metal basket was extended 30 feet into the freezing air, hovering directly over the center circle. Sitting on the very edge of the metal basket, his legs dangling casually over the terrifying drop, was Marcus Vale. 1. He was wearing his thick black parka, the hood pulled up over his head. In his right hand, he held a black wireless microphone. A series of heavy-duty speakers had been temporarily wheeled out and positioned at the four corners of the training pitch. "What on earth is he doing up there?" Scott McTominay muttered, squinting through the mist at the dangling legs of the manager. "I think he's finally lost his mind," Harry Maguire replied, genuinely concerned for the manager's safety. "Good afternoon, gentlemen," Marcus's voice suddenly boomed across the pitch, amplified perfectly by the four-corner speakers. His tone was characteristically lazy and completely unbothered by the fact that he was suspended 3 stories in the air without a harness. The players jumped slightly at the booming sound, looking up at the basket. "You look very small from up here," Marcus announced cheerfully through the speakers. "Today, we are working entirely on defensive spacing. When you are on the grass, your perspective is flawed. You only see the man in front of you. You do not see the gaps behind you. From up here, I see the entire chessboard." Down on the touchline, Michael Carrick and Mike Phelan stood holding their clipboards, shaking their heads in amusement at the sheer eccentricity of the setup. "He actually requisitioned that machine from the construction crew out back," Phelan chuckled to Carrick. "Said he needed a better angle." "Right, let's set the drill," Marcus's voice echoed across the mist. "We are running a full pitch, 11 versus 11 attack against defense scenario. I want the starting back 4 and the midfield pivot defending the goal on the left. Lindelof, Maguire, Dalot, Telles, McTominay and Fred sitting in front of them." The designated defenders jogged over to their positions, taking up their shape. "The attacking team," Marcus called out. "Cristiano, Cavani, Rashford, Sancho. Bruno, you operate as the free playmaker behind them. Your only job is to try and break the defense down. Crosses, through balls, long shots. Throw everything at them." Cristiano Ronaldo jogged into the attacking half, looking up at the cherry picker with a wide grin. "You are going to freeze to death up there, Mark." Ronaldo shouted up at the basket. "I have a heated coat, Ronnie," Marcus's voice boomed back down, completely deadpan. "Worry about getting past Harry Maguire, not my body temperature. Michael, blow the whistle." 6. Carrick blew his whistle sharply. The drill began. Bruno Fernandes started with the ball. He immediately looked to orchestrate the play, driving forward and zipping a pass out wide to Jadon Sancho on the right flank. Sancho took a touch, squared up Alex Telles, and threw a rapid step over, trying to dart toward the byline. "Stop!" Marcus's voice cracked through the speakers like thunder. The players instantly froze in their positions. "Fred," Marcus said calmly, his legs swinging lazily over the 30-foot drop. "Look left." Fred turned his head toward the wing. "Too narrow," Marcus instructed surgically. "Sancho goes wide, you step over. Double team with Telles." He paused, letting the spacing sink in. 3 yards left. Kill the passing lane to Cavani. Fred immediately shuffled over, realizing the massive gap he had left blindly open in the channel. Good, Marcus barked. Play. Bruno received the ball back from Sancho and quickly switched the play to the opposite flank, finding Marcus Rashford. Rashford ignited his pace, driving directly at Diogo Dalot. Rashford cut inside sharply onto his right foot, looking to curl a shot into the far corner. Stop! Marcus called out again. Rashford halted mid-stride, keeping the ball at his feet. Harry! Step up earlier, the manager's voice echoed. Maguire looked up, shielding his eyes from the glare of the floodlights. You're retreating too much, Marcus instructed from the sky. Rashford cuts inside, you step up. Put your body in the way. Marcus paused. Close the distance. If he shoots now, it hits you. Maguire took 2 large steps forward, placing himself directly in front of Rashford's shooting trajectory, instantly realizing that his previous position would have allowed a clear sight of goal. Good. Play. As the session dragged on, the mental strain of the intense, hyper-coordinated movements began to show. Adapting to the strict spatial demands wasn't instant, players occasionally forgot their triggers, their old habits bleeding through the new coaching. Bruno collected the ball in the center and played a quick wall pass with Donny van de Beek. Sensing an opportunity to be aggressive, Scott McTominay broke ranks. The Scottish midfielder stepped hard out of the defensive pivot, lunging forward to press Bruno near the center circle. Bruno effortlessly slipped the ball past him, straight into the massive hole McTominay had just abandoned. Cavani was waiting there, completely unmarked. Stop! Marcus commanded. McTominay froze, turning around to see the damage. Scott! You overcommit, Marcus said, his voice entirely devoid of anger, just cold observation. He had space, boss, McTominay shouted back, breathing heavily. Hold the shape, Marcus corrected. You jump out to cover, the center is dead. Let the forwards press him. You stay anchored. You are the shield, not the spear. Reset. McTominay nodded, jogging backward into his zone. The lesson was brutal, but the aerial perspective made the flaws impossible to deny. For the next hour, the Carrington pitch turned into an intense, highly choreographed masterclass. Marcus used his panoramic, bird's-eye view to dissect the microscopic flaws in their defensive shape. He wasn't relying on post-training video analysis, he was fixing their positioning in real time, rewiring their brains on the grass. 1. Bruno Fernandes, frustrated by the compact defense, looked up and launched a massive, looping cross toward the back post. Edinson Cavani made a brilliant, curving run, losing Victor Lindelof entirely in the box. Cavani brought the ball down with his chest and volleyed it into the back of the net. Stop, Marcus boomed over the speakers. Lindelof turned around, throwing his hands up in frustration. Victor! You watched the ball, Marcus stated from the basket. I lost him in the flight, boss, Lindelof admitted defensively. In the box, maintain contact, Marcus commanded sharply. Touch his arm. Feel his hip. Don't rely on your eyes. 1. Marcus paused. If you feel him move, you move. Lindelof nodded, absorbing the harsh but accurate advice. The drill restarted. This time, Sancho slipped a pass inside for Cristiano Ronaldo. Ronaldo received the ball with his back to goal, 30 yards out. He didn't try to turn. He simply laid it off to Bruno, spun on his heel, and made a violent, explosive sprint straight through the gap between Maguire and Dalot. Bruno played a flawless, first-time lofted pass perfectly into Ronaldo's path. Ronaldo took it on the volley, smashing it past the training goalkeeper. Stop, Marcus called out. Maguire and Dalot looked at each other, both expecting to be berated for letting the greatest goalscorer in history run between them. That was not a mistake, Marcus's voice echoed surprisingly across the damp pitch. Perfect run. Perfect pass. Sometimes the attack wins. Reset. He paused, offering a quick adjustment. Press Bruno earlier next time. Do not let him look up. The players nodded, appreciating the honest assessment. The manager wasn't demanding impossible perfection, he was demanding the correct decisions. If they made the correct decision and still got beaten by a moment of magic from Ronaldo, he wouldn't scream at them. As the session dragged on, the cold began to bite deeper, but the concentration levels on the pitch were staggering. The defensive unit was moving like a synchronized net. Every time the attackers shifted the ball, the back four and the midfield pivot slid horizontally in perfect unison. The gaps were closed. The passing lanes were choked. Rashford tried to use his pace, but Dalot and McTominay trapped him against the touchline. Cavani tried to make near-post runs, but Maguire stayed glued to his hip, using physical contact to disrupt his momentum. Bruno tried to launch long shots, but Fred was constantly stepping into the firing line, forcing him to pass backward. Up in the cherry picker, Marcus stopped pacing his corrections. He just sat on the edge of the metal basket, his legs dangling over the massive drop, resting his chin on his hand holding the microphone. He watched the defensive shape shift, expand, and compress flawlessly. "Good," Marcus murmured into the mic, his quiet voice echoing softly over the tired, heavy breathing of the players below. "The distances are correct. You are moving as a unit. You are not chasing shadows." He tapped the microphone twice. "Session is over. Excellent work today." The players collapsed onto the grass, stretching their cramped muscles. It had only been an hour, but the immense mental focus required to maintain the rigid tactical shape had exhausted them more than a 2-hour running session ever could. Marcus pressed a button on a remote control in his pocket. The heavy hydraulic arm of the cherry picker hissed, slowly lowering the metal basket back down to the earth. When the basket hit the ground with a dull thud, Marcus stepped out onto the damp grass, and slipped his hands into his pockets. He walked past the exhausted players, offering a lazy nod to Ronaldo and a pat on the shoulder for McTominay. "Ice baths and recovery," Marcus instructed breezily as he walked toward the main building. "Tomorrow, Zakaria and Guimarães join the squad. We integrate them into the shape immediately. Have a good evening, gentlemen." As Marcus disappeared through the glass doors of the complex, Harry Maguire sat up on the grass, wiping the sweat from his eyes. He looked over at Bruno Fernandes, who was leaning against a training mannequin, breathing heavily. "He sees absolutely everything, doesn't he?" Maguire muttered, shaking his head in disbelief. "It's like playing chess against a supercomputer." Bruno offered a tired, respectful grin. "He sees the board," Bruno agreed, picking up a football and tossing it to the captain. "Our job is just to be the right pieces. Come on. The ice bath is waiting." The tactical foundations were poured. The new signings were arriving. The Premier League schedule was unrelenting, but for the first time in years, the Manchester United squad wasn't relying on hope. They were relying on absolute, drilled certainty. Manchester United League position, 4th place, firmly holding the Champions League qualification spot. Golden Boot race, top 3. Mohamed Salah, Liverpool, 16 goals. Cristiano Ronaldo, Manchester United, 12 goals. Diogo Jota, Liverpool, 10 goals 1. Chapter 32, The Midfield Engine. The January air at Carrington was sharp enough to bite through layers of thermal clothing, but out on pitch 1, the temperature was running incredibly hot. The winter transfer window was still wide open for the rest of Europe, with clubs frantically negotiating loans and panic-buying strikers. But for Manchester United, the heavy lifting was completely finished. The incoming business was done, and the final piece of the outgoing puzzle was being filed as Anthony Martial officially signed a loan deal with an option to buy for Sevilla. Out on the grass, the new arrivals were already integrating. Marcus was suspended 30 feet in the air, sitting comfortably on the edge of the metal basket of the industrial cherry picker. Following his successful tactical experiment the previous week, Marcus had instructed Alexander Vance to purchase the machine and make it a permanent fixture on pitch 1. From his bird's-eye view, Marcus wasn't just watching the starting 11. Knowing the brutal, congested calendar that awaited them in future, he was actively rotating the defensive pairings every 5 minutes. He paired Harry Maguire with Eric Bailly, then swapped Bailly for Victor Lindelof. He mixed Alex Telles with Diogo Dalot, then brought Luke Shaw in. He was ensuring every single defender understood the exact spacing required, regardless of who was standing next to them. "Harry! Step up," Marcus's voice boomed calmly through the mounted speakers. "You're retreating too much." Maguire immediately took 2 steps forward, closing the gap. "Good," Marcus echoed. "Dalot! Tighter! Don't leave the channel open." Down in the center of the pitch, the midfield drill was underway. The physical presence of Denis Zakaria made itself known instantly. The towering Swiss midfielder didn't ease himself into his first English training session. When Fred took a slightly heavy touch, Zakaria closed the distance with terrifying speed, stepping firmly into the challenge and winning the ball cleanly. A few yards away, the other new arrival was attempting to dictate the tempo. Bruno Guimaraes had the ball at his feet, constantly scanning his shoulders. However, there was a slight disconnect. Bruno. Shift left, cover the passing lane. Michael Carrick shouted from the grass, gesturing toward the flank. Guimaraes paused for a fraction of a second, looking confused by the rapid, heavy English instruction. In that split second, Jadon Sancho pounced, poking the ball away. Up in the sky, Marcus pressed the hydraulic release. The cherry picker hissed, slowly lowering the basket to the earth. Marcus unclipped the safety chain, stepped onto the damp grass with his hands in his pockets, and wandered over to the new Brazilian midfielder. "You are holding the ball too long because you are trying to translate the shouts in your head," Marcus said. He didn't speak in English. He spoke in rapid, flawless, native Portuguese. Guimaraes' eyes widened in surprise. He knew the manager was Portuguese, but hearing his native tongue delivered with such crisp fluency in the middle of a freezing English training session instantly lowered his anxiety. 3. "I am trying to learn the words, boss," Guimaraes replied in Portuguese, looking slightly embarrassed. "The English lessons are going well, but on the pitch, it is too fast. He wants you to slide into the left channel to block the passing lane the moment you release the ball," Marcus explained softly in Portuguese, placing a reassuring hand on the midfielder's shoulder. "Do not worry about the language barrier right now. Watch the boots, not the mouths. Play your natural game." 2. Guimaraes nodded, a relieved smile breaking across his face. "Understood, boss. Thank you." Marcus turned back to the rest of the squad, seamlessly switching back to English. "We have a minor communication issue we need to resolve immediately," Marcus announced lazily, looking between his two playmakers. "We cannot have two Brunos on the pitch. When Carrick shouts the name, both of you stop running." Bruno Fernandes laughed, wiping sweat from his forehead. "I was here first, boss. I keep the name." "Fair enough," Marcus smiled, turning to the new Brazilian. "From now on the grass, he is Bruno. You are Gima. If you hear Gima, you move. Clear." 3. "Clear," the squad echoed. "Good. Restart the drill." "Faster this time," Marcus ordered, strolling back to the touchline. While the squad worked on their passing rhythms, a black luxury SUV pulled up to the front entrance of the main Carrington building. Paulo Dybala stepped out into the Manchester drizzle. The Argentine forward had spent the morning undergoing rigorous medical checks at a private facility in the city. The £18 million fee had been wired to Juventus, securing the forward on a permanent deal before his contract expired in the summer. Dybala was escorted into the building, surrounded by club photographers capturing his arrival. He walked down the main corridor, pausing to look at the portraits of club legends lining the walls. As he turned a corner, he practically bumped into Cristiano Ronaldo, who was heading toward the indoor turf after a gym session. 1. Paulo. Ronaldo beamed, his face lighting up with genuine warmth as he saw his former Juventus teammate. Cristiano. Dybala smiled widely, dropping his bag to accept a firm, brotherly embrace from the Portuguese star. 6. "Welcome to Manchester, my friend," Ronaldo said, clapping him on the back. "It is so good to see you. You will like it here." "I am ready for it," Dybala replied, looking excited. "I missed playing with you." "Where is the manager?" "He is in his office," Ronaldo pointed down the hall. "But be careful. He is unique." 2. Dybala raised an eyebrow at the warning but continued down the hall alongside Alexander Vance, who had come out to greet him. They reached the door with a small silver plaque reading First Team Manager. Vance knocked twice and opened the door without waiting for a response. Dybala stepped inside, expecting to find a stern, intimidating figure hunched over tactical whiteboards. Instead, he found Marcus Vale sitting in his desk chair, his feet propped up casually on the edge of the desk. His head was tilted back, his arms crossed over his chest, and his eyes were completely closed. Soft, rhythmic breathing filled the quiet room. He was fast asleep. Vance stopped in his tracks, letting out a long, incredibly exasperated sigh. "Marcus!" The loud sigh caused Marcus to jolt. His feet slipped off the desk, hitting the floor with a thud. He sat up quickly, blinking, running a hand through his slightly messy hair and offering a goofy smile. "Were you sleeping?" Vance asked, rubbing his temples in disbelief. We are signing one of the best forwards in Europe, and you are taking a nap. I was not sleeping, Alex, Marcus defended himself lazily. I was deeply engaged in mental visualization. Vance just stared at him. Right. Paolo, meet your new manager. Dybala, trying to hide a highly amused grin, stepped forward and offered his hand. It is a pleasure to meet you, boss. 3. Marcus stood up, instantly dropping the sleepy demeanor. His posture straightened, and he shook Dybala's hand firmly. Welcome to the club, Paolo, Marcus said, his tone shifting into its crisp, professional register. I am very glad you are here. We needed a player with your exact profile to operate in the pockets behind Cristiano. You have the technical ability to unlock deep defenses, and you know how to combine with him. You will play as a false 9. You will find the space, and you will feed him. Dybala nodded, appreciating the immediate, clear footballing instruction. I know how to play with him, Dybala agreed. I am looking forward to getting on the pitch. Finish your media duties, Marcus instructed cheerfully, picking up a pen from his desk. Tomorrow, you train. We have a lot of matches to win. Dybala and Vance left the office to complete the formalities. Marcus sat back down, letting out a quiet breath. The squad was finally complete. He opened his laptop, pulling up the video feed of their upcoming opposition. A quiet knock at the door broke his concentration. Come in, Marcus called out. The door opened, and Mason Greenwood walked into the office. The young forward looked slightly nervous, hovering near the doorway. You wanted to see me, boss? Greenwood asked. Marcus paused the video. He looked at the calendar on his desk. It was mid-January. Before Marcus had been reborn, in his previous life, he remembered exactly what had transpired in late January 2022 regarding the young forward standing in front of him. The horrifying audio recordings, the photographs, the immediate suspension, and the permanent scarring of a promising career in a young woman's life. Marcus had brought Greenwood into the office today with a very specific purpose. He could not change the past, but he was the manager of this football club now, and he had the power to alter the future before the point of no return. Sit down, Mason, Marcus said, his voice warm and inviting. Greenwood took a seat in the leather guest chair, resting his hands on his knees. You've been playing very well recently, Marcus began, maintaining a relaxed, easygoing tone to lower the player's guard. Your finishing off both feet is exceptional. You are adapting to the shape perfectly. Thank you, boss, Greenwood smiled. I'm feeling really sharp. Good, Marcus nodded, leaning back in his chair and spinning his red magnet slowly. But I didn't bring you here to talk about your left foot. I brought you here to talk about your life. Greenwood blinked, slightly confused. You are 20 years old, Marcus continued, his tone shifting into that of a mentor. You are playing for Manchester United. You have money, you have fame, and you have millions of people telling you how brilliant you are every single day. How are you handling the noise? Greenwood shrugged lightly. It's fine, boss. I just try to focus on the football. Hang out with my mates, spend time with my girlfriend, you know? Just normal stuff. Marcus stopped spinning the magnet. Fame is a very dangerous liar, Mason, Marcus said quietly, leaning forward. It is a trap. I look at players like Paul Pogba, or Jesse Lingard. Unbelievable, world-class talent. But they let the noise get to them. They let the fame and the money dictate their actions off the pitch, and it ruined their ceiling on it. Greenwood listened intently. The manager wasn't yelling, he was offering genuine, fatherly advice. When you have status, Marcus continued, his eyes locking onto the young forward with absolute sincerity, the people around you, your friends, the hangers-on, will tell you that you are untouchable. They will make you feel like the normal rules of society do not apply to you. They will make you feel like you can treat people however you want, because you are a star. I talk to the club's mental health specialists daily, Mason. They see this happen to young players all the time. Marcus leaned forward slightly, resting his arms on the desk. I am having all the young players coming up from the academy talk with them twice a week, Marcus said, keeping his tone light but highly encouraging. I want you to try it. Talk to them regularly. It is not a strict obligation, but it will be very good for your mental health. To help you manage the noise. Greenwood swallowed, nodding quickly. He didn't feel like he needed a psychiatrist, but if the new manager was suggesting it, he wasn't going to say no. He wanted to stay in Marcus's good favor. Yeah, boss. I can do that, Greenwood agreed. I'll talk to them. Good, Marcus smiled warmly, before his gaze sharpened just a fraction. Because the noise is a lie. How you treat people behind closed doors is the only true measure of the man you are. How are things with your partner? They're good, boss, Greenwood stammered slightly, caught off guard by the deeply personal question. I demand absolute discipline on the grass, Marcus said, his voice soft but carrying an unyielding weight. But I demand even more respect off it. A real man treats his partner with absolute respect. Always. A man who raises a hand or forces his will on a woman is not a star. He is a coward. 4. Greenwood swallowed hard. He didn't understand the prophetic foresight behind the conversation. He didn't know the specific disaster Marcus was actively trying to prevent. He simply viewed it as a fierce, deeply serious mentorship lecture from a manager laying down the absolute moral boundaries of life. If I ever hear that a player at this football club has crossed that line, has abused their partner or treated a woman with disrespect. Marcus leaned back, his eyes never leaving Greenwood's. Their career at Manchester United will end instantly. Fame will not save them. Money will not save them. Do you understand me, Mason? 1. Greenwood stared at the 27-year-old manager, sensing the gravity in the room. I understand, boss, Greenwood said firmly, nodding his head. I swear. I treat people right. Marcus held his gaze for 3 more seconds, searching the boy's eyes, planting the psychological barrier as deep as he possibly could. Then, the heavy intensity vanished. Marcus offered a lazy, goofy smile and picked the red magnet back up. Good, Marcus said cheerfully. I just wanted to make sure we were on the same page. You have the potential to be a legend here, Mason. Don't let the noise ruin it. Keep working hard on your movement inside the box. And you will be talking to a psychologist regularly. Dismissed. Greenwood stood up quickly, letting out a quiet breath. Thanks, boss. See you tomorrow. He walked out of the office, closing the door behind him. Marcus watched him leave. He didn't know if the mentorship would be enough to alter the timeline, but he had given the boy a stark, undeniable warning. The rest was up to him. 5. Over the next 3 weeks, the Manchester United tactical machine shifted into an unrelenting gear. 2. The integration of Kieran Trippier, Dennis Zakaria and Bruno Guimaraes completely transformed the squad's capability on the pitch. They no longer had to hide their weaknesses, they could actively impose their strengths. In mid-January, United travelled to Villa Park to face Steven Gerrard's Aston Villa in the Premier League. Armed with a newly reinforced midfield, Marcus deployed the 4-4-2 diamond. Guimaraes operated at the base, orchestrating the play with incredible vision, completely bypassing the Villa press with precise, one-touch passing. United dominated the match. Cristiano Ronaldo, thriving off the elite crosses from Trippier and Telles, scored twice inside the penalty box. A late consolation goal from Philippe Coutinho couldn't stop United from securing a comfortable 2-1 victory. 3 days later, they travelled to London to face Brentford. Under the freezing rain, Thomas Frank's side tried to turn the match into a physical, aerial battle. Marcus responded by unleashing Dennis Zakaria. The Swiss midfielder operated as a pure destroyer, winning every second ball in the centre of the pitch and physically dominating the Brentford midfield. United sat in a compact shape, absorbed the long throws, and struck ruthlessly on the counter-attack, winning 2-0. 1. At the end of January, West Ham United arrived at Old Trafford, bringing former United player Jesse Lingard with them. David Moyes set up a stubborn, deep defensive block, frustrating the home side for 70 minutes. Marcus didn't panic. He brought Paulo Dybala off the bench for his debut. The Argentine immediately drifted into the pockets of space between the West Ham defenders, linking up brilliantly with Donny van de Beek. In the 82nd minute, Dybala slipped a beautiful reverse pass into the box, and Cristiano Ronaldo hammered it home to secure a gritty 1-0 win. 10 straight Premier League victories. The winning streak continued. The dressing room was entirely unified. 1. By early February, the Premier League paused for an international break. The Carrington training complex emptied out as the vast majority of the first-team squad flew across the globe to represent their respective national teams. Only a handful of senior players who had retired from international duty, alongside a crop of academy prospects, remained in Manchester. For Marcus, it was a welcome reprieve from the relentless pressure of match days. He spent his mornings running highly technical passing drills with the youth team, enjoying the pure, uncomplicated act of coaching without the glaring spotlight of the media watching his every move. On a quiet Tuesday afternoon, Marcus was standing on pitch 2, demonstrating a specific body shape adjustment to a young Alejandro Garnacho. 5. Do not face the touchline when you receive the ball, Marcus instructed lazily, demonstrating the stance. Open your hips to the center of the pitch. See the whole board before the ball even arrives. He tossed the ball to Garnacho, who executed the turn perfectly, driving toward the training mannequins. Better, Marcus nodded. Marcus, a voice called out from the edge of the grass. Marcus turned to see Alexander Vance walking across the pitch. The CEO was wearing a sharp-tailored suit, looking entirely out of place on the damp turf. Alex, Marcus greeted him, walking over. What brings you out into the cold? Did we secretly sign someone else? No, Vance smiled slightly. But we do have a media obligation to fulfill. Marcus frowned, crossing his arms. The press conferences are paused during the international break. I am enjoying the silence. It's not a press conference, Vance explained, gesturing toward the main building. It is a sit-down interview. A long-form piece. The commercial department needs to humanize your image. You have spent the last 2 months terrifying the local journalists and giving one-word answers. It is highly effective for winning football matches, but we need to show the fans the man behind the tactics. Marcus sighed heavily. He hated performative media. Who is conducting it? Just walk inside, Vance said, a knowing smirk on his face. He is waiting in the media suite. Marcus patted Garnacho on the shoulder, told the academy coach to wrap up the session, and followed Vance back into the complex. They walked down the corridor and stopped outside the secondary media room. Vance opened the door and gestured for Marcus to enter. Marcus stepped inside. The room had been completely transformed. Heavy black curtains blocked out the windows. Professional lighting rigs were set up, illuminating 2 comfortable leather armchairs facing each other in the center of the room. 4 different camera angles were positioned around the perimeter. Sitting in one of the armchairs, reviewing a stack of cue cards, was Gary Neville. Neville looked up as Marcus entered. Afternoon, Marcus. Marcus stopped. He looked at Neville, then looked back at Vance standing in the doorway. The overlap, Marcus realized, recognizing the famous YouTube interview format. Exactly, Vance nodded, looking extremely pleased with himself. I knew if I told you about it yesterday, you would have found an excuse to drive your Volvo into the mountains and hide. Have a seat. Do the interview. Improve your image. Vance stepped out and pulled the door shut, locking Marcus in the room with the cameras. Marcus let out a long, slow breath. He slipped his hands into the pockets of his tracksuit, pulled out his red tactical magnet, and walked slowly toward the empty leather armchair. I have to admit, Marcus, Neville said, a wide, slightly nervous grin on his face. When Axiom agreed to let us do this, I didn't think you would actually show up. You haven't exactly been the media's best friend since you arrived. Marcus slumped comfortably into the armchair, crossing his legs and resting his chin on his hand. He looked at the former United captain with a lazy, half-amused expression. I was ambushed, Gary, Marcus deadpanned smoothly. But since I am trapped here, let's talk about football. Neville chuckled, tapping his cue cards on his knee, ready to dive into the mind of the most enigmatic manager in the world. Manchester United League position, 3rd place 1. Golden Boot race, top 3. Mohamed Salah, Liverpool, 17 goals. Cristiano Ronaldo, Manchester United, 15 goals 1. Diogo Jota, Liverpool, 11 goals. Chapter 33, The Overlap, 1. The secondary media room at Carrington had been completely transformed. The heavy black curtains were drawn tight, blocking out the grey February sky. Professional lighting rigs bathed the center of the room in a warm, cinematic glow, illuminating 2 plush leather armchairs facing each other across a small, low table. 4 camera operators moved silently around the perimeter, checking their angles. Gary Neville stood near the center of the room, looking into the primary camera. He took a breath, adopting the serious, passionate tone that defined his broadcasting persona. I'm Gary Neville, and welcome to the overlap, Neville began, his voice echoing slightly in the quiet room. Today, we are at the Carrington Training Complex. Over the past 3 months, Manchester United has undergone a seismic shift. New ownership, new infrastructure, and most notably, a completely new identity on the pitch. The man responsible for that shift arrived as an unknown and immediately grabbed English football by the throat. He is the youngest manager in Premier League history, he is currently on a 10-match winning streak, and today, he has finally agreed to sit down and explain exactly what is going on behind these walls. Neville turned to his right, gesturing toward the armchair opposite him. Ladies and gentlemen, the manager of Manchester United. Marcus Miguel Silva Vale. Marcus stepped into the light. He wasn't wearing his match-day suit, he wore a simple, unbranded black hoodie and dark track pants. His posture was characteristically lazy, his hands buried deep in his pockets. He offered a sleepy, half-closed smile as he walked over to Neville. "Gary," Marcus said, pulling his right hand out of his pocket to shake Neville's hand firmly. "Marcus. Thanks for doing this," Neville replied, gesturing to the chairs. They both sat down. Neville leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees, holding a stack of cue cards. Marcus slouched back into the leather. He pulled his circular red tactical magnet from his pocket and began to roll it slowly over his knuckles. "Let's get straight into it," Neville started, his tone direct. "I'll be honest with you, Marcus. Nobody knew who you were 3 months ago. You've walked into the biggest pressure cooker in world football. What was the exact moment you thought, yeah, I can fix Manchester United?" Marcus flipped the magnet lazily. "Believe." He paused, letting the single word sit in the air. "If you do not believe you can solve the puzzle, you shouldn't sit at the table." 2. "But the new ownership, Axiom, they brought you in," Neville pushed. There was a lot of skepticism. "Did you feel that doubt from the players when you first walked into the Carrington dressing room? Did they look at you and think, who is this kid?" "Winning cures doubt," Marcus answered smoothly. "I managed Dians in Belgium under Axiom. They knew my process. As for the players, there is always doubt with a new manager. But the moment you show them a system that makes winning easier, the doubt vanishes." Neville nodded, checking his cards. "You don't do standard press conferences. You read off scripts, you give one-word answers, you don't play the media game at all. Is that a deliberate tactic to shield the players, or do you just genuinely hate the circus?" "Both," Marcus smiled faintly. "The media here is relentless. If I give you a sarcastic answer, or read a PR script aloud, you write about me. You debate my arrogance on television for 3 days." Marcus paused, the clicking of the magnet stopping for a second. "And while you are doing that, my players are training in peace. I take the attention. They lose the pressure." Neville let out a short, appreciative laugh. "It's certainly working. But what about the methods? I have to ask about the cherry picker. I was driving into Carrington today and saw you 30 feet in the air with a microphone. Where did that come from, and what are you actually looking for up there?" "Perspective," Marcus said softly. "On the touchline, you only see horizontal lines. You only see the man with the ball. Up there, I see the whole board. I see the exact distances. I can correct the spacing before the mistake happens on a Saturday." "Let's talk about those mistakes," Neville said, leaning in closer. "Before you, there was David Moyes, Louis van Gaal, José Mourinho, and Ole Gunnar Solskjær. 4 very different managers, all ultimately failing to restore the standard. What do you think went wrong for them?" Marcus stopped rolling the magnet. He looked at Neville, tilting his head slightly. "Let's say there is a film production," Marcus began, his voice quiet but incredibly sharp. "You have a great director. A great script. Emotional content. The director wants certain character actors to fill the roles because they fit the story." Neville listened intently, realizing Marcus was unpacking a decade of boardroom failure. "But then, the producer arrives," Marcus continued. "The producer says, no. I want global action superstars. Explosive names. I need a massive box office opening weekend. The director cannot object as he already signed a contract. He casts the superstars." Marcus flipped the magnet once. "The movie is completed. The producer gets his opening weekend revenue. But after 2 days, the movie tanks. The action superstars cannot carry the emotional, nuanced content of the script. The structure fails. And then, everyone blames the director for the flop. He is the first scapegoat. Neville stared at him, letting the heavy weight of the analogy settle in the room. So, Neville said carefully, you are saying the Glazers were the problem. Not the managers, and not the players. Marcus offered a lazy, completely unbothered shrug. You said it, Gary. Not me. Neville shook his head, a wry smile breaking across his face. It was the most accurate, devastating summary of Ed Woodward's Galactico era he had ever heard. Right, Neville chuckled. But some of those previous managers tried to play expansive football. You've come in, and many pundits including Jamie Carragher on our own broadcasts are accusing you of parking the bus and counter-attacking. What do you say to that? I say it is logical, Marcus replied effortlessly. I didn't have time to work on the training ground. The fixtures were unrelenting. When you have no time, you take a deep breath. Sit back. Relax. Do the work calmly. Marcus leaned forward slightly. Defend the penalty area. Attack quickly. First, you stop the leaking of goals. Then, you talk about attacking systems. So what kind of players do you actually want in your team long term? Neville asked. What is that one thing you need? Is it speed? A robust physique? Talent in dribbling? Elite passing? Marcus stopped rolling the magnet. He looked at Neville, his sleepy expression replaced by clarity. Speed? Passing? Dribbling? Marcus asked, offering a dismissive shrug. You can buy that everywhere. He paused, letting the silence hang. Calmness under pressure, and hard work. That is rare. If I have a player like that, I will never lose him. And how do you want this team to play eventually? Neville pushed. What is the Marcus Vale philosophy? Adaptability, Marcus answered instantly. They should execute a low block, a mid block, a high block, high pressing. Name the tactic, they should do it. My plan depends entirely on the opposition. He slumped back into his chair. But you can't dump that into their heads on day one. It is a gradual process. It takes time. And to reach that level, you need the right personnel, Neville said, checking his cards. The club's recruitment has been an absolute mess for a decade. A graveyard for players. But you've come in and signed Kieran Trippier, Bruno Guimaraes, Dennis Zakaria, and Paulo Dybala in a matter of weeks. Who is actually pulling the strings on the recruitment now? I give a list of specific profiles, Marcus stated concisely. Alexander Vance makes sure I get it. I ask for realistic targets. He uses the corporate machinery. We don't waste time. Let's talk about Cristiano, Neville said, shifting the topic to the biggest star in the room. Everyone said he doesn't press, that he ruins the modern shape. You came in and built your tactics around that fact. What is your justification for that? Systems should fit good players, Marcus explained, his tone firm. Not the other way around. If you create a structure where your best goal scorer is placed in a situation to win you matches efficiently, it is a perfect system. But what about the other forwards? Neville challenged. Rashford, Sancho, Greenwood. Won't they feel like you are showing too much priority to Cristiano? Why does he get to rest while they run? We are talking about Cristiano Ronaldo, Marcus said, raising an eyebrow as if the answer was incredibly obvious. He scores in clutch moments. He earned that priority over 15 years. Marcus flipped the magnet. The others, they have to earn it. If they ask for it, it usually means they aren't as good as they think they are. Cristiano cannot play every match. When the time comes, the others have to prove themselves. And when they do, their teammates will look for them, exactly like they look for Cristiano now. Neville nodded, accepting the meritocracy of the answer. I heard a rumor and tell me if I'm wrong, Neville grinned, looking down at his cards. I heard you are hiring an MMA and wrestling coach for set-piece defending. Is that true? Yes, Marcus confirmed casually. Soon, there will be a wrestling specialist in the building. They need to learn how to evade blocks in the penalty box. Neville laughed out loud. Incredible. I've been critical of the standards at this club. The leaks, the egos, the body language. When you arrived, how broken was the culture behind the scenes? Up until now, everything is fine, Marcus deflected smoothly, refusing to throw the squad under the bus. We are winning. Once we start losing, there will be a few cracks. Maybe because I am new, they are behaving. Time will test the culture. Let's talk about New Year's Eve, Neville said, his eyes lighting up. You walked into the Tollgate pub, hit a 180 on the darts board, talked tactics with the lads, and drank a pint of stout. Was that planned PR, or just you being you? It was New Year's Eve, Marcus shrugged lazily. I didn't want to sit in my house alone. So I went and had a bit of fun. That's all. But that kind of connection, Neville pressed. I played under Sir Alex, and he knew the name of the tea lady, the groundsman, the security staff. Everyone. Are you trying to bring that family feeling back to the club, or is this strictly a clinical, business-first environment? Marcus looked at Neville. The lazy, sleepy demeanor vanished. Kath is the head receptionist, Marcus stated clearly. David manages the East Wing security gate. Sarah handles the dietary logistics in the canteen. Paul is the head groundsman for pitch 1. Marcus and Lee assist him. Joanne runs the laundry logistics. Terry. 1. Marcus continued, rattling off the first and last names, and the specific daily duties, of exactly 24 non-footballing staff members who worked inside the Carrington complex. He didn't pause to think. He delivered the list with terrifying, photographic recall. Neville stared at him, his mouth slightly open in genuine shock. Okay, okay. Neville laughed, raising his hands in surrender as the camera crew chuckled in the background. I got it. You know who works where? The laughter faded. Neville stopped smiling. The broadcaster persona melted away for a brief second, replaced entirely by the former club captain who had lived through the glory days of Old Trafford. That matters more than tactics at this football club, Marcus, Neville said softly, his voice thick with sudden emotion and genuine respect. Marcus slumped back into his chair, the goofy smile returning to his face. The dressing room, Neville continued, clearing his throat to recover his composure. I'm told you ban celebrations after a league win. Is that true? It's just a win, Marcus answered, unfazed. Unless you win a cup, there is no need for a celebration. Do your job. Go home. You let Paul Pogba and Jesse Lingard leave in January, Neville pointed out. 2 academy lads, big personalities. Was that a footballing decision, or a culture decision? One was footballing. One was cultural, Marcus mused quietly. He took a brief pause. I don't know which is which. It is up to you to decide. Neville shook his head at the masterful deflection. Modern players have massive egos, Neville noted, leaning forward, steering the interview toward its climax. They have millions of followers on Instagram. They have massive commercial pull. How do you command the respect of someone like Edinson Cavani or Raphael Varane? Cavani, Varane, they have won everything, Marcus said smoothly. They respect clear instructions. I am more worried about the others. Marcus stopped flipping the magnet. The players who are on the verge of stardom, Marcus explained, his voice turning cold. They listen to the noise. They listen to their entourages. What will you do about it? Neville asked. Talk to them, Marcus said. Make sure they are level-headed. He held Neville's gaze. But if they don't listen, the standard does not drop at this club. I have my ways. Aren't you afraid that the players will turn on you? Neville pressed, sensing the ruthless edge and going for the ultimate question. The exact same thing happened to Jose Mourinho here. He challenged the players, they mutinied, and they got him sacked. Marcus looked at Neville. He offered a slow, faint, completely unbothered smile. I don't have anything to worry about, Marcus said softly. Why? Neville pushed. No manager is unsackable. If the players down tools, the board always sacks the manager. Because they cannot do anything to me, Marcus stated, his voice ringing with absolute, terrifying clarity in the silent room. There is a specific clause in my contract with Axiom Global Partners. If Manchester United decides to fire me, there is a £500 million release clause. If the players mutiny, and the board has to fire me, they have to pay me £500 million in cash. 8. Neville's eyes widened in sheer, unfiltered shock. The camera operators behind the lights audibly gasped. £500 million. Neville stammered, completely losing his broadcaster composure. 4. Chapter 34, The Overlap, 2. The silence in the secondary media room at Carrington was absolute. Gary Neville stared across the low table at Marcus Vale, his mouth slightly open, his mind struggling to process the sheer, unprecedented magnitude of the number he had just heard. Behind the glare of the professional lighting rigs, the camera operators exchanged wide-eyed looks. Half a billion pounds. Neville stammered, entirely abandoning his polished broadcaster persona. Marcus remained slouched in the plush leather armchair. He picked up his red tactical magnet and began to roll it slowly over his knuckles, offering a faint, sleepy smile. Yes, Marcus confirmed softly. Are you telling me the truth? Neville asked, leaning forward, genuinely unable to believe it. Manchester United actually signed a contract with a £500 million release clause if the club sacks you. I told them to specifically add that clause, Marcus explained, his voice calm and entirely devoid of arrogance. I wanted it in the paperwork for one very simple reason, Gary. The manager must be the most powerful person in the dressing room. Always. Neville blinked, taken aback by the bluntness. That sounds almost authoritarian. Marcus smiled faintly, stopping the movement of the magnet. Football dressing rooms are dictatorships pretending to be democracies, Gary. You should ask Sir Alex about it. Neville let out a loud, breathless laugh, dragging a hand across his face as a few of the camera crew chuckled behind the lights. If the players know it costs the club 50 million to sack the manager, Marcus continued smoothly, they will mutiny if they are unhappy. They know the board will always take the cheaper option. But if the players know it costs £500 million, they realize the board has no choice but to back me. The mutiny becomes mathematically impossible. 3. How did you even negotiate for a contract like that? Neville asked, shaking his head in sheer disbelief. Give me the contact of your lawyer, Marcus. Next time I'm renewing my broadcasting contract with Sky, I want him in the room representing me. Marcus chuckled softly. He is very expensive, Gary. I don't know what to say, Neville admitted, sitting back in his chair. I have never heard anything like that in my entire life in football. Let's just say I never asked that question, and you never answered it. Neville tapped his cue cards, composing himself, before looking back up with a sudden, sharper curiosity. But speaking of Axiom, Neville pressed, they are a massive corporate entity. You were managing their club in Belgium, and now they bring you here. How much influence do you actually have inside Axiom? Marcus didn't blink. The dramatic irony hung heavily in the air, unknown to everyone in the room except the 27-year-old manager. Enough that they usually listen when I speak, Marcus answered lazily. Neville narrowed his eyes, searching Marcus's face. That sounds ominous. Only if the results stop, Marcus replied effortlessly. Neville laughed again, shaking his head. He looked down at his cards and shifted the topic. You project this incredible calm. But let's be real. When you first walked into Old Trafford as Manchester United manager, were you nervous? For the first time in the entire interview, Marcus actually paused. The lazy flipping of the red magnet stopped. He looked away from Neville, staring off slightly into the middle distance. It was a rare, microscopic crack in the armor. For about 3 seconds, Marcus said quietly. Neville laughed out loud. Only 3. Marcus looked back at him, the sleepy smile returning. Then I saw the pitch. The pitch is always the same. The grass doesn't know how big the stadium is. Well, people talk endlessly about what you do on that grass, Neville said, leaning forward. We've analyzed your deep blocks, your pressing traps. But can you actually show us something? Give us a look inside your head. Marcus raised an eyebrow. He stood up slowly from his armchair and walked over to a large, interactive tactical screen positioned near the back of the set. The camera operators immediately scrambled to adjust their angles to follow him. Marcus pulled his red magnet from his pocket and tapped the screen, bringing up a digital pitch. Crystal Palace, Marcus said casually. Everyone wondered why I played Aaron Wan-Bissaka centrally instead of overlapping. Neville stood up and walked over to join him, genuinely fascinated. Patrick Vieira wanted to counter-attack using Wilfried Zaha on the left wing, Marcus explained, dragging a blue icon wide on the digital pitch. Zaha thrives on isolation. If Aaron pushes up the pitch to provide width like a traditional fullback, Zaha stays high in the empty space behind him. Marcus dragged a red icon Wan-Bissaka into the center circle, placing him directly next to the defensive midfielder. So, I inverted Aaron. Out of possession, he stood centrally, Marcus stated. But that is only the first layer. If Aaron is central, Palace can just hit a diagonal long ball over him to Zaha, right? Exactly, Neville nodded. You leave the flank completely exposed. Which is why the rest of the defensive shape shifts to kill the diagonal, Marcus said, moving 3 more red icons. When we lose the ball, Bruno Fernandes and Donny van de Beek immediately collapse on the Palace ball carrier. We do not press to win the ball, we press to obscure their vision. If the ball carrier has to look down to protect the ball, he cannot see Zaha's run, and he cannot execute a 50-yard diagonal cross accurately. Marcus tapped Wan-Bissaka's central icon. Because Bruno and Donny are crowding the ball carrier, Palace is forced to play a short, central ground pass to try and escape the pressure, Marcus explained, his voice clinical. And right there, standing exactly in that central passing lane, is Aaron Wan-Bissaka. We baited them into passing into the middle, right into our best tackler. Neville stared at the board. The trap was incredibly complex. It wasn't just about putting a man on Zaha, it was about manipulating the entire opposition team into making a specific pass that would never reach him. 1. You don't fight a winger on the touchline, Marcus concluded, tapping the screen once. You remove his supply line before he even takes off. Neville looked from the board to Marcus. He slowly realized he wasn't just talking to a confident young coach, he was talking to an absolute tactical monster. That is brilliant, Neville murmured respectfully. He gestured back to the chairs. Let's sit back down. Once they were settled, Neville picked up his cards again. Right. Let's move to the youth, Neville said. You seem to treat the academy lads differently. I see you talking to Mason Greenwood, Anthony Elanga. What is the message you are drilling into the youth right now? They are the future of the club, Marcus replied. I have to keep an eye on their development. The senior players have already formed their habits. The academy players are a blank canvas. Did you see anyone from the academy breaking into the first team squad? Neville asked. There are a few names constantly mentioned. Garnacho, Kobbie Mainoo, Elanga. They have excellent potential, Marcus noted. Garnacho is very direct. Mainoo has fantastic spatial awareness for his age. Elanga has raw pace. But there is one player I have my eye on specifically. He is out on loan right now, playing for Nottingham Forest. James Garner, Neville recognized instantly. 5. Yes, Marcus nodded. He controls the tempo very well. He will be playing for the club next season. He fits the profile I need for the base of the midfield. Neville smiled, clearly pleased. Do you believe in the hairdryer treatment? I played under Sir Alex, and he used it to terrifying effect. Have you lost your temper in that dressing room yet? Times have changed, Gary, Marcus said, leaning back. The hairdryer treatment does not work on the new generation of players. During your time, the culture was different. The players responded to fear and intimidation. Not anymore. If you scream at a 21-year-old millionaire today, he just switches off. He calls his agent. So, no, I don't use the hairdryer treatment. Marcus offered a slight shrug. I use consequences instead. Neville chuckled, shaking his head. Speaking of Sir Alex, he is obviously a massive presence at Old Trafford. Have you actually sat down and met with him yet since taking the job? Not yet, Marcus answered, resuming the lazy roll of the magnet. I have been entirely too busy fixing the structure on the grass. And honestly, you do not show up to meet a man of his stature empty-handed. I haven't been able to find an appropriate gift for him yet, so I am postponing that meeting for the foreseeable future. Neville laughed out loud. A gift? What do you buy the man who has won everything? Exactly the problem, Gary, Marcus smiled. Neville checked his cards. Let's talk about Bruno Fernandes. He was carrying the team for 2 years, but he played on pure emotion and chaos. He was everywhere. You've come in and completely disciplined his positioning. Was that a difficult conversation? No, Marcus answered instantly. Bruno is a highly intelligent player. He understands what I am asking. He is suppressing his natural instincts for the benefit of the team shape right now. He knows we need stability. Marcus paused. And soon, when the midfield base is permanently secure with the winter signings, I will release him into the attacking third more often. It is just a matter of time. Let's look at the elite, Neville said. Pep Guardiola at City. Jurgen Klopp at Liverpool. They've set a standard that is frightening. How far away is Manchester United from actually competing with them over a grueling 38-game season? With the current depth of the squad I have. Marcus mused, looking directly at Neville. I cannot compete for 4 cups in a calendar year. It is physically impossible. I think it will take another 3 transfer windows for United to compete on all fronts simultaneously. So, right now, we have to prioritize which competitions we actually want to win. Paulo Dybala, Neville noted, checking his cards. A massive name, huge talent, but he struggled heavily with muscular injuries during his final years at Juventus. Where does he fit into your setup? He will be playing alongside Cristiano at the front, Marcus explained. As for the injuries, we hope he doesn't get injured. But more importantly, we will make sure he is not overused. His minutes will be heavily monitored. The Champions League is coming back around, Neville said, his eyes sharpening. You battered young boys, but the knockouts are entirely different. You drew Diego Simeone and Atletico Madrid. Is this squad ready for a Tuesday night against Bayern Munich or Real Madrid? The team is ready for any big opponent, Marcus stated with certainty. Neville smiled, tapping his cue cards on his knee. All right, Marcus. We always end the overlap with this. It's the quick-fire round. First thing that comes into your head. Ready. Ready, Marcus smiled lazily. Messi or Ronaldo? 1. The one sitting in my dressing room. Win 4-3 or win 1-0. 4-0. Conceding 3 means you weren't paying attention. Neville laughed loudly. Favorite manager? The special one. 5. Pep or Klopp? Depends. Do I have the better midfield? High press or low block? Whichever makes my team win on that specific day. Most overrated thing in football? Passion without structure. Neville gave a low whistle of appreciation. Who is the best player in the Premier League right now who doesn't play for Manchester United? Kevin De Bruyne. Roy Keane or Paul Scholes? Keane. I want someone exactly like that in my dressing room. VAR, keep it or scrap it. Keep it. The 1994 Volvo estate. I have to ask. Why? Comfort for sleeping in the car park. And the heated seats still work perfectly. Tea or coffee? Green tea. What time does your alarm go off in the morning? I don't use an alarm. Who is the hardest working player in your training sessions? Cristiano Ronaldo and Scott McTominay. Which player in your squad asks the most annoying tactical questions? Marcus chuckled. Bruno. He wants to know the why for every single blade of grass on the pitch. Best tactical manager in world football right now. Jose Mourinho. If I give him the exact profiles he wants, he can easily win any big match. 3. Worst thing about living in Manchester? Manchester City being your noisy neighbors. 2. Best thing about living in Manchester? The music. When was the last time you genuinely lost your temper? When I was managing Dienz, and we were playing in the Belgian 2nd Division. Darts or snooker? Both. What is your biggest fear as a manager? Soft tissue injuries 48 hours before a big match. Neville smiled, tapping the final card. Last one, Marcus. Look down the camera lens right there, and give the Manchester United fans your final message. Marcus turned his head. The sleepy, easygoing demeanor vanished completely. He locked eyes with the primary camera lens, his expression turning ice cold. Manchester United fans have spent years lowering their expectations to protect themselves from disappointment, Marcus stated, his voice quiet, precise, and ringing with terrifying authority. He let a small, deliberate pause hang in the silent room. You can stop doing that now. 4. Neville stared at him, feeling the genuine weight of the promise settle over the studio. Marcus Vale, Neville said finally, extending his hand, a look of profound respect on his face. Thank you. 3. Chapter 35, The Overlap Reactions. On a quiet Thursday evening during the international break, the notification pinged simultaneously on millions of smartphones across the globe. YouTube, The Overlap with Gary Neville. Marcus Vale exclusive, the £500 million clause, fixing Man UTD, and tactical secrets. The thumbnail was perfectly curated. On the left, Gary Neville was looking genuinely shell-shocked with his hands on his head. On the right, Marcus Vale, slouched in a plush leather armchair, rolling a small red magnet across his knuckles with a lazy, half-closed smile. The internet did not just react, it completely halted. Within the first 60 minutes of the video going live, the view counter broke, stuck at 450,000 views, while the live comments scrolled so fast the platform's servers struggled to render the text. It was the most anticipated football interview of the season. Fans of every club in the Premier League tuned in, expecting to see the arrogant, 27-year-old manager finally slip up under a grueling hour-long interrogation from a club legend. Instead, they watched an absolute masterclass in psychological dominance. In a red-lit studio in Manchester, Mark Goldbridge was hosting a live watch-along on the United stand. Over 200,000 concurrent viewers were tuned into his stream. Goldbridge had been sitting in his gaming chair, completely silent for the last 5 minutes of the video, his eyes glued to the screen. When Marcus delivered the final line, "You can stop doing that now," and the video faded to black, Goldbridge didn't speak. He slowly took his headset off. He stood up from his desk. He walked out of the frame of the camera for 10 seconds, leaving his audience staring at an empty chair. When he finally walked back into the frame, he slammed his hands onto the desk, leaning directly into the microphone. "I am absolutely speechless," Goldbridge shouted, his voice cracking with sheer adrenaline. "I am on my knees. Did you just watch what I watched? That is not a football manager. That is a mafia boss who just happens to know how to set up a midfield." He grabbed his water bottle, took a frantic sip, and spun back to his monitor. "Let's break this down, because my head is spinning," Goldbridge continued, pulling up clips from the interview. "First of all, the tactical board. Neville asks him to show us something. Vale walks over to the screen, and he absolutely exposes Patrick Vieira. You don't fight a winger on the touchline. You remove his supply line before he even takes off. He made Neville look like a schoolboy learning the alphabet. The simplicity of it. We've spent years watching managers overcomplicate the game, and this guy just uses Aaron Wan-Bissaka as a brick wall." Goldbridge paused to read the super chats flooding his screen. "Right, the clause. We have to talk about the clause," Goldbridge said, his eyes wide. £500 million. I nearly fell out of my chair. Gary Neville looked like he needed a paramedic. "Do you understand what this means, lads? For the last decade, whenever the players got bored of a manager, they just stopped running. They threw Mourinho under the bus. They threw Ole under the bus. They knew the Glazers would take the cheap option and sack the manager to keep the commercial stars happy." He tapped his desk aggressively. Vale walked into Axiom's office and said, "Make me unsackable." And they did. He has destroyed player power at Manchester United in one contract. If the players down tools now, they rot in the reserves, because the board cannot afford to sack him. It's an absolute masterstroke of ruthlessness. He's 27, and he holds all the cards. Across town, the tone on Stretford Paddock was slightly less frantic, but equally mesmerized. Stephen Howson and Jay Motti were broadcasting their live reaction. "For me, it wasn't the £500 million clause that got me," Howson admitted, shaking his head. "It was the staff names." "Oh, mate," Motti agreed immediately. "That gave me goosebumps." Neville tried to trap him, Howson explained to the audience. Neville brought up Sir Alex, trying to test if Vale actually cared about the club culture or if he was just a cold suit. And Vale just rattled off 24 names of the Carrington background staff. The tea lady, the groundsman, the security gate workers. First and last names, and their specific daily duties. He has a photographic memory for the people who actually run the club. Did you see Neville's face? Neville was holding back tears. That is the moment the old guard accepted him. But he isn't trying to be Sir Alex, Motti pointed out. That's the beauty of it. When Neville asked about the hairdryer treatment, Vale just shot it down. "If you scream at a millionaire today," he calls his agent. "I use consequences instead. It's terrifyingly cold, but it fits the modern game perfectly." While the United fan channels were busy building statues of the manager in their minds, the rest of football Twitter was engaging in an all-out, fiercely toxic meme war. Rival fans, particularly those from London and Merseyside, were desperate to tear down the aura Vale was building, latching onto his dictatorship comments to brand him with a new nickname, the Crazy One. 2. The quotes from the quick-fire round and the heavy £500 million revelation provided endless ammunition for both sides. At GNEV2, I have interviewed hundreds of people in football. I have never been left genuinely speechless until today. You have to watch this. The culture at Old Trafford has changed. Large red circle. At Fabrizio Romano, £500 million release clause if Manchester United fire Marcus Vale. Axiom agreed to the highest managerial compensation package in the history of sports to guarantee his total authority over the dressing room. Mind-blowing. Money bag. At Cara 23, £500 million for a manager who has won a few games playing a low block? Circus tent. The Glazers left, but the circus continues. At AFC Gunnar, £500 million release clause for a manager who drives a 1994 Volvo and drinks green tea. You cannot make this up. He is the Portuguese Tim Sherwood. Just vibes and arrogant quotes. Loudly crying face. At Troll Football, image, a split screen. Top, a picture of Jose Mourinho looking sharp with the caption "The Special One." Bottom, a picture of Marcus Vale slouched in his chair, half asleep, with the caption "The Crazy One." At CFC_fansnews, passion without organization is overrated. Congratulations to Marcus Vale on discovering the basics of coaching. United fans acting like he invented passing the ball. Tuchel is still clear. 1. At Football Memes, video clip, a scene from The Office of David Brent doing a cringe-worthy dance. Caption, Marcus Vale explaining how he stopped Wilfried Zaha from running. At Kloppet__, I'm sorry, but saying conceding 3 means you weren't paying attention is just asking for karma. The second Liverpool put 5 past this guy, I am framing that quote and hanging it in the Louvre. At Citizen99, United fans hyping up a guy who literally said football dressing rooms are dictatorships pretending to be democracies. Wait until the massive egos in that squad get tired of his PE teacher attitude. The mutiny will be glorious. At Chelsea_daily, the crazy one has lost the plot. You can't treat modern players like prisoners. Watch Sancho and Rashford force a transfer by the summer. At UTD Faithful, rival fans laughing at the Volvo while their clubs just got tactically dismantled by a guy who doesn't even use an alarm clock. Do I have the better midfield? He owns Pep and Klopp already. Large red circle fire. At the Man UTD way, Arsenal fans calling him Tim Sherwood when he literally drew a diagram on live TV showing exactly how he put Mikel Arteta in a blender. Cry more. At Stretford Paddock, the grass doesn't know how big the stadium is. Put that quote on a t-shirt. The man is completely immune to pressure. We finally have a manager who isn't terrified of the job. 1. At UTD_analytics, the tactical board segment was beautiful. He didn't just say we stopped Zaha. He explained the exact passing lane trap that starved him of the ball. Elite footballing brain. At Barstool Football, image, a terribly photoshopped picture of Marcus Vale's green 1994 Volvo equipped with massive monster truck tires, actively running over a crying Mikel Arteta and Thomas Tuchel. At David_Ornstein, industry sources confirm the £500 million clause is real. It is a dual-purpose mechanism by Axiom to legally prevent any future board members from making rash, emotion-based sackings, while simultaneously killing player power. At Spursofficial_fan, he literally admitted he's a dictator. How are United fans celebrating this? He sounds like a Bond villain. At Mark Holdbridge, you can stop doing that now. The coldest final line to an interview I have ever heard. I would run through a brick wall for Marcus Vale. At Everton News, imagine paying £500 million to sack a manager. Just relegate them now. 2. At Statman Dave, Vale's photographic memory of the Carrington background staff shouldn't be overlooked. He plays the cold assassin, but he clearly studies the human element of the club obsessively. At Liam Paul Canning, Carragher posting clown emojis because he's terrified. He knows the banter era is over. Vale is the crazy one and he's coming for the league. At Football Vlogs, video edit, Marcus Vale answering 4-0 with thug life glasses and a gold chain dropping onto his face. At LOFC_family, the crazy one is going to crash and burn so hard. £500 million clause for a guy who was in the Belgian 2nd Division. Axiom got scammed. At United Stand Mufk, rivals calling him a dictator because he expects players to actually work for £300,000 a week. Sorry, we don't accept jogging anymore. At Rio35, just watched the overlap. The boss is icy cold. Loved the bit about consequences instead of screaming. The modern game is changing, and he gets it. large red circle. At Troll Football, image, Gary Neville looking like he's about to pass out, with a buffering loading circle on his forehead. At GGFN_, Dennis Zakaria and Bruno Guimaraes watching this interview knowing they are joined a dictatorship. Smiling face with open mouth and cold sweat. At the European lad, you can mock the car, the tea and the sleeping, but no manager in Europe has explained a pressing trap as clearly as Vale just did on that touch screen. The Premier League is on notice. While the fans and pundits fought their digital wars, a much quieter, far more important reaction was happening in private. It was 10:30 p.m. Inside a luxury apartment in the affluent suburbs of Manchester, Jadon Sancho was sitting on his sofa, wearing a gaming headset. He was in a private Call of Duty, Warzone lobby with Marcus Rashford and Mason Greenwood. The game on the screen was completely ignored. Their characters were standing perfectly still in a virtual building while the players talked through their headsets. They had all just watched the interview. "Did you hear the silence in the studio when he dropped the 500 million bomb?" Sancho said over the headset, his voice a mixture of awe and genuine disbelief. "I had to rewind it twice to make sure I heard him right," Rashford replied, a quiet, almost nervous laugh escaping him. Gary Neville looked like he was going to pass out. "I thought he was joking at first, but his face, he was dead serious." "He isn't joking," Greenwood chimed in. "You saw him in the briefing room. He doesn't bluff. If he says it's in the contract, it's in the contract." A heavy pause fell over the voice chat. The young forwards were processing the massive power shift that had just been broadcast to the world. For the past few years, the culture at Manchester United had been inherently favourable to the players. If a manager's setup was too demanding, or if results dipped, the players knew they could simply outlast the man on the touchline. The media would blame the coaching, the board would panic, and the manager would be sacked. Marcus Vale had just publicly announced that he had hard-coded an override into the club. "It's mad when you think about it," Elanga said quietly. "He's only 27. He's basically the same age as Rashi. But the way he talks, you feel like you're talking to someone who's been doing this for 30 years. That dictatorship line," Sancho murmured. "He basically told the whole world that player power is dead. We can't complain to our agents because the club literally cannot afford to sack him. We are locked in." "It's not just the money," Rashford noted thoughtfully, his tone incredibly serious. "Did you catch what he said about the hairdryer treatment? I don't scream. I use consequences instead. That's terrifying, lads. Think about it. If a manager screams at you, you can shout back. It's an argument. You can release your frustration. But Vale doesn't argue. If you don't run, the consequence is he just stops looking at you. He deletes you from the team sheet." Rashford swallowed. "It's so much worse than being shouted at. You can't fight back against silence. It takes the pressure off, though," Greenwood pointed out. "Did you hear what he said about us? About the academy lads and the younger players? He called us a blank canvas. He didn't bash the young players for making mistakes, he just said he wants to build our habits properly. I'll take a dictatorship if it means we actually win something." "Easy for you to say," Sancho groaned playfully over the mic, trying to lighten the mood. "You didn't have to do a break-dancing fish routine in front of the whole squad because you failed his telepathy quiz. I'm still getting mocked in the Instagram comments for that video. People think I've lost the plot." "Mate, that dance was horrific," Elanga laughed loudly. "I'm surprised he didn't sell you to West Ham just for the moonwalk attempt." 2. "Laugh all you want," Sancho retorted. "Next time he hands out those white boards, I'm copying Nemanja Matic's answers." The banter continued, but the underlying realization was firmly planted in their minds. The manager was completely untouchable. The media could not rattle him, the board was financially bound to him, and he possessed a tactical mind that even Gary Neville had bowed to. There was no longer any room for excuses. They had to follow the blueprint, or they would be left behind. A few days later, the international break officially concluded. The squad reconvened at Carrington to prepare for the FA Cup fourth-round tie against Middlesbrough. Before the morning session began, Marcus sat in his office. A gentle knock sounded at the door, and Nemanja Matic stepped inside. "You asked to see me, boss?" the Serbian veteran asked. "I did, Nemanja." "Sit down," Marcus said cheerfully. Matic took a seat. Marcus opened a drawer in his desk and pulled out a heavy, dark velvet box. He slid it across the polished wood toward the midfielder. A deal is a deal, Marcus said, leaning back and crossing his arms. I promised a highly exclusive reward for the winner of the telepathy quiz. Maddock looked at the box, then opened it carefully. Inside, resting on a black silk cushion, was a stunning, platinum Audemars Piguet Royal Oak wristwatch. It was a masterpiece of horology, worth an exorbitant amount of money. Maddock's eyes widened slightly. Boss, this is too much. I can't accept this. You can, and you will, Marcus replied breezily, waving a hand. It was sent to me as a gift from a very wealthy sponsor in Dubai. I don't wear watches, Nemanjia. They are too heavy on the wrist. I prefer to know what time it is by looking at the sun. It suits you much better. Maddock laughed softly, shaking his head at the manager's eccentric logic, but he closed the box and nodded respectfully. It is a beautiful piece. Thank you, boss. You earned it by reading the dressing room perfectly, Marcus said, the lazy smile fading just a fraction. Now, go out onto the pitch and read Middlesbrough. Dismissed. With the squad fully returned and the morale high, Marcus made his way to the Jimmy Murphy Center for the pre-match press conference. The media suite was packed for the pre-match press conference. The journalists were buzzing. The overlap interview had generated hundreds of headlines, but the English press corps wanted to see how Marcus would react to the specific, targeted criticisms from rival pundits, chiefly Jamie Carragher's highly disrespectful clown emoji tweet. Marcus walked into the room wearing his black club tracksuit. He slouched comfortably into his chair, pulling the red tactical magnet from his pocket and rolling it lazily across his knuckles. Good afternoon, Marcus said, his eyes half closed and looking exceptionally bored. The media officer pointed to Simon Stone. Marcus, the FA Cup against Middlesbrough tomorrow, Stone began. A lower league opposition. Are you planning to rotate the squad heavily after the international break? We will rotate where necessary, Marcus answered smoothly. But respect the opponent. Middlesbrough will be highly motivated. If we are complacent, the FA Cup is notorious for punishing complacency. James Ducker from the Telegraph took the microphone, instantly pivoting to the drama. Marcus, your interview with Gary Neville broke the internet this week. The £500 million release clause generated massive debate. Some rival pundits were highly critical of your comments. Specifically, Jamie Carragher took to Twitter, calling your tactics a circus and referring to you with a clown emoji. The room went dead silent. The bait had been dropped. They waited to see if Marcus would explode, defend his honor, or attack Carragher's playing career. Marcus stopped rolling the red magnet. He didn't frown. He didn't raise his voice. Instead, he let out a soft, airy chuckle. A slow, deeply amused smile spread across his face. Ah! Jamie Carragher, Marcus said softly, his tone completely breezy and conversational. He leaned his elbows on the desk, looking directly at the cameras. You see, Marcus mused lazily, I could sit here and say something very aggressive about Jamie. But then, I would probably regret it later. Marcus tilted his head, his smile sharpening into something lethal. I don't want to say something rash and then later have to issue a desperate, groveling public apology on television. The journalists in the front row audibly gasped. A few hands flew over mouths. Marcus had just directly referenced Carragher's infamous, career-staining incident where he was caught on camera spitting at a family's car, forcing him to issue a tearful public apology on Sky News. Marcus didn't stop. He delivered the final, fatal blow with terrifying calmness. That is very much his territory, Marcus concluded, his voice dropping into a quiet, chilling register. I will just wait for his public apology to me. Which, as we all know, he is an expert at. 3. After that the press continued normally. At Mark Holdbridge, I am in tears. He just murdered Jamie Carragher on live television. Bring me a body bag. Vale is the goat. Loudly crying face, loudly crying face, loudly crying face. At GNEV2, mate. At Cara 23. I think you should sit the next few plays out. Ambulance 4. 1. At AFC Gunner, I hate United, but Marcus Vale bringing up the spitting apology to absolutely destroy Carragher is the greatest press conference moment in Premier League history. Respect. At Troll Football, image, a photoshopped picture of a chalk outline at a murder scene. Inside the chalk outline is Jamie Carragher's Monday Night Football suit. Standing over it is Marcus Vale holding a smoking microphone. At LFC_family, that was out of order from the United manager. Personal attacks have no place in football. Unprofessional. At UTD Faithful, Liverpool fans crying about unprofessional when Carragher literally called our manager a clown unprovoked. Don't throw stones if you live in a glass house. Vale ended him. At Football Memes, image, the classic Simpsons meme of the crying kid saying stop, stop. He's already dead. Photoshopped over Jamie Carragher's face while Marcus Vale smiles. 1. At Statman Dave, I usually stick to the data, but Marcus Vale's expected verbal murders, XVM, per 90 minutes is currently off the charts. At Cara23, silence. No tweets posted since the press conference. At Stretford Paddock, the silence from Carragher's account right now is deafening. Vale didn't just beat him, he retired him from Twitter. At Meme Central, image, a photoshopped image of Jamie Carragher wearing a full, colorful clown suit, holding a massive pie to his own face, with the caption, expert apologist. At Rio35, just seen the presser. The boss does not take prisoners. Remind me never to tweet anything bad about him. Skull. At Chelsea_daily, okay, Marcus Vale is a terrifying human being. Carragher is fighting for his life in the group chats right now. At Troll Football, image, a screenshot of Jamie Carragher's Wikipedia page. The occupation section has been edited to read, currently owned by Marcus Miguel Silva Vale. 1. At the Man UTD way, the best part is he didn't even raise his voice. He just smiled, dropped the most savage insult of the decade, and walked out. At Football Vlogs, video edit, Marcus Vale delivering the apology quote. The screen turns black and white, thug life glasses drop onto his face, and next episode by Dr. Dre starts playing. At Citizen 99, United finally win a trophy, the Press Conference Cup. Enjoy it while it lasts. 1. At Memes of Football, image, a photoshopped picture of Roy Keane sipping a cup of tea, looking extremely relaxed and satisfied, with the caption, watching Carragher get humbled. At United Stand Mufk, he tried to bully a 27-year-old manager and found out that Axiom hired a corporate assassin. Rest in peace, Jamie. Manchester United League position, 3rd place. Golden Boot race, top 3. Mohamed Salah, Liverpool, 16 goals 1. Cristiano Ronaldo, Manchester United, 15 goals 2. Diogo Jota, Liverpool, 11 goals 1. Chapter 36, The Cauldron of Madrid. The relentless, freezing grind of the English winter slowly gave way to the crisp, electric tension of late February. It was Tuesday, February 22, 2022. The eve of the Champions League round of 16. Over the preceding weeks, Manchester United had quietly transformed into an unyielding, incredibly stubborn footballing machine. The domestic campaign had been a grueling test of endurance. A sudden wave of minor muscular injuries had swept through the fringe of the squad in late January, sidelining Jadon Sancho, Alex Telles and Donny van de Beek for a few matches each. The absences forced Marcus Vale to heavily rotate his squad. Consequently, the flawless winning streak had ended, resulting in a series of gritty, hard-fought draws against teams like Southampton and Burnley in the Premier League. But while they had dropped points, they had absolutely refused to lose. The unbeaten run under Marcus Vale remained entirely intact. Furthermore, the core of the team had been massively bolstered. Raphael Varane had fully returned from his hamstring rehabilitation. The Frenchman's elite recovery pace allowed Marcus to push the defensive line 5 yards higher up the pitch, suffocating opponents even further. The domestic cups provided no stumbling blocks. United had ruthlessly dispatched their FA Cup opponents, marching comfortably into the 5th round. Most importantly, the Premier League landscape had shifted. With Mohamed Salah departing for the African Cup of Nations, Cristiano Ronaldo had relentlessly capitalized. Supplied by Kieran Trippier's pinpoint crosses and Bruno Fernandes's deeper passing range, Ronaldo had plundered 4 goals in his last 3 league matches. He currently sat alone at the top of the Golden Boot race with 17 goals. The sheer output had propelled Manchester United into 3rd place in the league table, breathing heavily down the necks of Manchester City and Liverpool. The squad's success wasn't just built on passing drills. It was built on the dark arts. Following the conversation with the fans in the pub on New Year's Eve, Axiom had hired a professional grappling and mixed martial arts specialist. He was a massive, terrifying Eastern European ex-Olympian who spoke English with a heavy, Booming accent. For the past month, inside a padded room at Carrington, the United players had been learning how to wrestle. The coach communicated his lessons primarily by grabbing Harry Maguire, Victor Lindelof, and Scott McTominay and repeatedly throwing them onto the mats until they learned how to lower their center of gravity. They learned how to slip a zonal screen, break a headlock, and use an opponent's momentum against them without triggering an offensive foul. As a result, United had stopped conceding goals from corners, transforming their penalty box into an impenetrable fortress of physical dominance. Now, that physical dominance was about to be tested against the ultimate masters of the dark arts. 1. The Manchester United team bus rolled through the vibrant, sun-drenched streets of Madrid, pulling into the underground loading bay of the Wanda Metropolitano Stadium. The squad filed off the bus, looking sharp in their club tracksuits. The mood was intensely focused. Diego Simeone's Atletico Madrid was waiting for them tomorrow night. Marcus Vail stepped off the bus last. He wore his thick black coat, his hands shoved deep into his pockets, his posture carrying its trademark, deceptively lazy slouch. He walked alongside club captain Harry Maguire through the concrete tunnels, heading toward the stadium's media center for the mandatory pre-match UEFA press conference. "Nervous, Harry?" Marcus asked breezily, not looking up. "Just focused, boss," Maguire replied, adjusting his collar. He respected the manager immensely, but sitting next to him in front of the press was always a terrifying experience. You never knew if Marcus was going to give a one-word answer or single-handedly declare war on a footballing institution. They entered the media room. The flashbulbs erupted instantly. The room was packed with journalists from across Europe. The Spanish press was eager to dissect the young prodigy, while the English press was waiting for another iconic soundbite. Marcus took his seat, pulling his small, red tactical magnet from his pocket. He placed it on the desk, leaned back in his chair, and offered a sleepy, half-closed smile. Maguire sat rigidly beside him, projecting pure professionalism, placing a bottle of water on the desk in front of him. The UEFA media officer signaled for the first question. Marcus, a Spanish journalist began, speaking rapidly in his native tongue through the microphone. Tomorrow is your very first Champions League knockout match as Manchester United manager. The pressure is immense. Are you excited or calm? Marcus picked up the red magnet, rolling it slowly across his knuckles. Ah! Marcus mused, his tone light and conversational. He didn't wait for the English translation to filter through his earpiece. Instead, he leaned toward his microphone and answered in flawless, effortless Spanish. He had learned all the major European languages purely for fun during his teenage years, treating linguistics like a simple puzzle to pass the time. Excitement is just a sudden spike in heart rate, Marcus continued in perfect Spanish, catching the English press completely off guard. It clouds your vision. Calmness lets you see the whole board. I am perfectly calm. 2. The Spanish journalist blinked in surprise, then nodded, deeply impressed, typing out the quote. A reporter from Sky Sports stood up next, shifting the focus back to English and touching on a major talking point for this season's tournament. Harry, a question for you, the reporter asked. UEFA has officially scrapped the away goals rule for the knockout stages this season. How does that change your mindset going into a massive away leg like this? Maguire leaned into the microphone, delivering a politically correct response drilled into him by years of PR training. It changes the dynamic slightly, yes, Maguire answered smoothly. But our mindset remains the same. We come here to win the match. We know Atletico are a fantastic side, very difficult to break down, but we are focused on our own game plan. The away goals rule being gone just means we have to defend properly and take our chances, regardless of the venue. And you, Marcus? The reporter followed up. Do you think the same regarding the scrapping of the away goals rule? Does it change your tactical approach? Marcus stopped flipping the red magnet. The sleepy smile faded, replaced by a sharp, highly amused glint in his eye. Beside him, Maguire subtly braced himself. Well, Marcus began, his voice carrying clearly across the silent room. It certainly helps the teams which don't have many real fans, and use a lot of money to buy success. A collective gasp went through the press corps. Maguire instantly unscrewed the cap of his single water bottle and took a long, painfully slow sip, trying desperately to hide his face behind the plastic. But they ultimately struggle, Marcus continued, shrugging lazily, because winning the Champions League requires more than just money. The reporter, sensing a massive headline, leaned forward eagerly. What exactly does that mean, Marcus? Are you criticizing UEFA's decision? Current players don't say anything because they are terrified of being fined by UEFA, Marcus replied, gesturing casually toward Maguire, who was currently taking another agonizingly slow sip of water, his eyes glued to the desk to avoid looking at anyone. But you should ask the retired players what they think of the away goals rule. They will tell you the truth. Marcus leaned forward, resting his elbows on the desk. They will tell you how difficult it is to score in a hostile away stadium in the Champions League, Marcus explained, his tone dropping into a serious, undeniable truth. The fans are right on top of you, booing every single touch. In some cases, the ultras create massive disturbances outside your hotel, setting off fireworks, making noises all throughout the night, not allowing you to sleep. There is a completely different kind of psychological pressure there. He picked up the red magnet again. The away goal rule rewarded teams for being brave enough to attack in that kind of terrifying cauldron, Marcus stated. Now, they just scraped the rule. I think the scales have just tipped against the historic, big clubs with massive, intimidating stadiums. For smaller teams, or teams with quiet stadiums, the new rule is a massive advantage because it sanitizes the sport. 2. The English reporters were furiously typing. Marcus had just publicly roasted clubs like Manchester City and PSG, teams with infinite wealth but historically quieter European atmospheres, while simultaneously attacking UEFA. 2. But Marcus, a bewildered French journalist interjected, speaking rapidly in French. Isn't Manchester United a massive club? Old Trafford is incredibly intimidating. Isn't this new rule certainly in your team's favor if you were pitted against a smaller club? Marcus tilted his head. He effortlessly switched his tongue, answering the man in crisp, immaculate French. When did I say we were not a massive club? Marcus asked breezily. I just said the matches should be like David versus Goliath, where David actually has a chance to fight back in this scenario. The suffering makes the victory sweeter. It will be more fun this way. The reporters stared at him, utterly disarmed by his logic and his sudden multilingual flex. He had insulted the rule, insulted rival clubs, and then claimed he preferred the old way because it was fun. Beside him, Harry Maguire capped his water bottle, smiling nervously, desperately trying to maintain a neutral expression while his manager set fire to the UEFA rulebook. The media officer quickly pointed to a Spanish tactical writer to move the conversation along. Marcus, what do you think of Atletico Madrid under Diego Simeone? Tough side. Good side, Marcus replied casually in Spanish. Should be a fun game. The reporters waited for him to elaborate on Simeone's legendary low block, his pressing traps, or his midfield shape. Marcus just sat there, flipping the magnet. He had no intention of elaborating. Another English journalist quickly stood up, turning to the captain. Harry, Atletico are known for targeting aerial duels, winning the physical battles, and fighting aggressively for second balls. How physical are you expecting this match to become tomorrow? Maguire leaned into the mic, incredibly grateful for a standard footballing question. We expect a war, Maguire stated firmly. They are incredibly physical, especially on set pieces. But we are prepared for it. We have worked tirelessly on our balance, our blocking, and how to control the penalty box. If they want to make it a physical battle in the air, we are more than ready to meet that challenge. A question for Marcus, Neil Custis from The Sun asked. Cristiano Ronaldo has an incredible, historic record against Atletico Madrid. He has scored countless hat-tricks against them. Does his history against them influence your tactical setup for tomorrow? Yes, Marcus said in English. Again, he didn't offer a single extra word. The silence in the room stretched out awkwardly. The English press corps realized what Marcus was doing. He was deliberately giving them nothing tactical to write about, completely starving them of any pre-match intelligence. Harry, Melissa Reddy asked, trying to fill the void. How much confidence has Marcus given the defense since arriving? The clean sheet record has improved dramatically over the winter. Very much so, Maguire answered, shooting a quick, respectful glance at the manager. He has given us clarity. We know exactly where we are supposed to stand, who we are supposed to track, and when we are supposed to drop. There is no confusion anymore. It makes defending much easier when the whole team is operating on the same wavelength. A Spanish reporter stood up again. Marcus, there's a growing narrative in the European press that Atletico Madrid and Manchester United are very similar stylistically right now. Both teams are highly organized, transition-focused, and incredibly difficult to break down. Do you agree with that assessment?
Yes, Marcus said cheerfully.
1. A few journalists actually groaned in frustration.
Marcus, Simon Stone pushed, trying to elicit a longer response.
Your comments about winning the Champions League earlier this season were laughed at by many people in the media. Considering your unbeaten run, do you feel your team is now proving you right?
Marcus paused.
He looked around the room, then turned his head to look at his captain.
I think so, Marcus said quietly.
But it is up to Harry to answer that question.
The spotlight suddenly swung to Maguire.
The pressure was squarely on the captain to back up his manager's massive gamble. 1.
Maguire didn't hesitate.
He let go of his water bottle. He leaned into the microphone, his face hardening with unyielding determination.
We are going to prove our manager right, Maguire stated, his voice ringing through the media room.
We believe in the plan. The conviction in Maguire's voice was undeniable. The fractured, toxic dressing room of the autumn was completely gone, replaced by a squad willing to run through brick walls for the 27-year-old sitting next to them.
Marcus, if tomorrow becomes an ugly game with very few chances, James Ducker asked.
Are you comfortable winning that way?
Yes, Marcus replied effortlessly. The UEFA media officer, realizing Marcus was essentially filibustering the press conference with one-word answers, called for the final question.
1.
Final question, Marcus, a reporter from The Athletic asked. Tomorrow you face Diego Simeone under the lights in the Champions League round of 16. Your unbeaten run is on the line. What kind of match are you expecting? Marcus stopped flipping the red magnet. He placed it in his pocket and stood up from his chair. He buttoned his coat, looking out at the frustrated, captivated audience. He offered his trademark, lazy, deeply enigmatic smile. A long one, Marcus said softly. Bring a coat. Diego already has a very nice one. I might ask him where he bought it. He offered a polite nod. Thank you, everyone. Marcus turned and walked toward the exit. Harry Maguire quickly thanked the press and followed his manager out the door, leaving his empty water bottle on the desk. The press conference had lasted barely 10 minutes. He had roasted UEFA, insulted Manchester City and PSG, flexed 3 different languages, and given them zero information. Later that evening, Sky Sports broadcast a special Champions League preview show. Realizing that Marcus Vail had directly challenged the established narrative regarding the away goals rule, the producers had scrambled to find retired players to comment on the manager's provocative statements. They ran a quick montage of video clips recorded remotely. First was Patrice Evra, the former United fullback, looking into his webcam. Marcus is spot on, Evra said, nodding enthusiastically. People sitting on their sofas don't understand the pressure of going to a place like Galatasaray or Roma. The noise is deafening. You can't even hear the player standing 2 yards away from you. Taking away the extra reward for scoring in that environment is a massive mistake by UEFA. 2. Next was former Chelsea and England captain John Terry. I have to agree with the United manager, Terry admitted. Playing away in the knockout stages was terrifying. If you were brave enough to actually attack and grab an away goal, it changed the entire psychology of the tie. Now, teams can just park the bus away from home, take a 0-0, and win it comfortably at home. It rewards negative football.
1.
Finally, a clip of legendary Italian defender Giorgio Chiellini played. The away goal rule was the soul of the Champions League, Chiellini stated firmly. It forced you to attack when you were terrified, and it forced you to defend for your life when you were comfortable. Scrapping it sanitizes the competition. Vail is absolutely right to call it out.
1.
The punditry class might have found Marcus arrogant, but the men who had actually bled on the pitch knew exactly what he was talking about. The second the broadcast ended, the digital footballing world erupted. The quotes regarding the away goals rule, the trilingual flex, and the sheer absurdity of his one-word answers triggered a massive wave of memes, furious rival tweets, and euphoric United reactions. At UTD Faithful, it helps teams with money but no real fans. He just nuked Manchester City and PSG in 3 different languages. Build the statue right now. Large red circle fire loudly crying face 2. At Fabrizio Romano, Marcus Vail does not care about UEFA fines. A brutal, direct attack on the scrapping of the away goals rule. The man is completely fearless in front of the press. Number MUFC. At City's N99,
he is literally talking about us. Arrogant clown. Enjoy getting knocked out by Simeone tomorrow night while we cruise to the quarter-finals. At Mark Holdbridge, I am on my knees. He just sat there and said yes to 4 different questions. He is treating the Champions League press like they are toddlers. At PSG_inside_n, a manager who plays anti-football shouldn't talk about clubs with ambition. We will see who goes further in this tournament. 1. Meme at Troll Football, image, a photoshopped picture of Marcus Vale wearing a pair of Thug Life sunglasses, smoking a cigar, with the UEFA Champions League logo burning in the background. 2. At the Man Utd way, we are going to prove our manager right. Harry Maguire actually spoke like a proper Manchester United captain today. The mentality shift in this squad is beautiful. At Adulty English, talk is cheap. The Metropolitano is waiting. Large red circle, medium white circle. Meme at Football Memes, image, a photoshopped WWE Royal Rumble poster. Luis Suarez is entering the ring, but waiting for him is Scott McTominay wearing a lookator mask and Victor Lindelof holding a steel folding chair. Meme at UTD exclusive, video clip, a scene from The Office where Michael Scott just stares blankly at the camera, with the caption, Spanish journalists waiting for Marcus Vale to explain his tactics. At Liam Paul Canning, he didn't back down from the Champions League promise. He doubled down and made Maguire back him up publicly. If they actually pull this off, it's the greatest managerial debut season in history. At AFC Gunner, I hate United, but Vale roasting City and PSG for having no fans is objectively hilarious. The guy is a content machine. Meme at Meme Central, image, a split screen. Top, Diego Simeone screaming and waving his arms frantically. Bottom, Marcus Vale fast asleep in a hammock with a red magnet on his chest. At Simeone Fever, he says yes because he knows he is tactically inferior to Cholo. Tomorrow, the English media darling will be exposed in Madrid. Meme at Rival Banter, image, a picture of Pep Guardiola counting his oil money, looking offended, with a speech bubble pointing to Vale's quote. At Rio35, the boss taking shots at UEFA before the biggest game of his career. I love the arrogance. Let's get a result tomorrow, boys. Large red circle fire. Meme at Chelsea_daily, image, SpongeBob standing up and saying I'd him a head out, with Marcus Vale's face pasted over it after answering yes 4 times. At Karl Anka, Vale's critique of the away goals rule is actually spot on. The old rule rewarded bravery in incredibly hostile environments. Now, wealthy teams can just play for a 0-0 draw away and win it comfortably at home. At GNEV2, he doesn't care. He genuinely does not care what anyone thinks of him. The most entertaining press conference I've seen in years. At CR7 Daily, Vale knows Ronaldo owns Atletico. Does his history influence your tactics? Yes. Chills. The GOAT is scoring a hat-trick tomorrow. 1. Meme at Footy Humor, video edit, a clip of Cristiano Ronaldo stepping off the team bus in Madrid. Cut to a clip of Atletico Madrid players and fans looking absolutely terrified, hiding under their beds. At United Stand Mufk, a long one. Bring a coat. Diego already has a very nice one. The coldest walk-off in press conference history. Vale is a cinematic villain and he manages my football club. At Juventus FCEN, Ronaldo returning to Madrid. We know how this story ends. Good luck, Atletico. You'll need it. Meme at Red Evil 99, image, a looping gif of Harry Maguire aggressively unscrewing his water bottle, taking a tiny sip, and staring at the desk while Marcus insults UEFA in French. At OptaJoe, 1. The number of words Marcus Vale used to answer 4 consecutive questions in a Champions League press conference. Concise. Meme at Espnfk, video edit, Marcus Vale answering yes repeatedly, followed by the Thug Life sunglasses dropping onto his face with Snoop Dogg music playing. 2. At the European Lad, you can mock the one-word answers, but the psychological pressure is entirely on Atletico Madrid now. Vale has given them absolutely zero insight into United's game plan. Manchester United League position, 3rd place. Golden Boot race, top 3. Cristiano Ronaldo, Manchester United, 17 goals. Mohamed Salah, Liverpool, 16 goals. Diogo Jota, Liverpool, 12 goals. Chapter 37, ATM vs MUN, 1. The road to the Wanda Metropolitano was paved with hostility.
As the Manchester United team bus slowly navigated the streets of the Spanish capital on Wednesday evening, it was flanked by heavy police escorts. The sky was thick with the crimson smoke of flares, and the rhythmic, deafening chants of thousands of Atletico Madrid ultras echoed against the reinforced glass of the windows. Inside the bus, the atmosphere was a study in absolute focus. Over the previous weeks, the club's front office had navigated the strict UEFA registration rules. A team was only permitted to register 3 new players for the Champions League knockout stages, regardless of how much business they had done in January. Marcus Vale had made his selections with certainty. Kieran Trippier, Denis Zakaria and Paulo Dybala were added to the European roster. Bruno Guimaraes was left off, tasked exclusively with dominating the Premier League midfield to ensure Zakaria remained entirely fresh for the continent. The bus rolled into the concrete tunnels beneath the stadium, shielding the squad from the noise. An hour later, the players completed their intense physical warm-ups on the immaculate pitch. The Madrid crowd rained boos down upon them, specifically targeting Cristiano Ronaldo, a man who had haunted their European dreams for over a decade. The players ignored the noise, finishing their passing drills and retreating down the tunnel into the away dressing room. When the squad filed into the room, chest heaving and sweat glistening on their foreheads, they found Marcus Vale waiting for them. The young manager was leaning back against the central table. He wore his heavy black coat, his hands shoved deep into his pockets. He didn't pace the room. He didn't look tense. He simply rolled his circular red magnet across his knuckles, waiting for the clatter of boots to subside. Harry Maguire took his seat, wiping his face with a towel. The room went silent. "We have been preparing for this match for the entire week," Marcus began, his voice calm and entirely devoid of the panicked urgency that usually preceded knockout football. "I have already told you what your specific roles are. But you need to understand the psychology of the team waiting for you out there." Marcus pocketed the magnet and looked across the room, making eye contact with his starting 11. "Diego Simeone wants to suffer," Marcus stated plainly. "He wants to score 1 goal, drop 10 men into his own penalty area, and turn the rest of the match into an absolute street fight. To do that, they will come out incredibly hard right from the kickoff. They will run at you. They will tackle you heavily. They want an early goal so they can sit back and defend it." He pointed toward the defenders. "Do not let them have it," Marcus instructed. "Harry, Rafa. Pay very close attention to João Felix. He is their primary threat. He will try to drop into the pockets of space between the midfield and the defense to turn and shoot. Do not give him an inch of breathing room. Shadow him closely." He turned to his forwards and midfielders. "Because they will commit bodies forward to press us early, they will leave space behind their wingbacks," Marcus explained, his tone dropping into a sharper, clinical register. "Get ready to counter-attack the second they make a mistake. When we win the ball, it must move incredibly fast from one end to another. No hesitation. You bypass their midfield before they can turn around." Marcus pushed himself off the table, slipping his hands back into his pockets. He offered a lazy, almost sleepy smile to his squad. "Well," Marcus sighed softly. "It is going to be a very long game. Get ready to be pounded by them for the first 10 minutes. Weather the storm. And then, we break them." He gave a polite nod. "Let's go." High up in the broadcasting gantry, the camera lights flicked on. The iconic, poetic voice of Peter Drury set the scene for millions of viewers watching across the globe, accompanied by his CEO commentator, Jim Beglin. Madrid. A city of royal white, but tonight, draped in the ferocious, uncompromising red and white of Atletico, Drury began, his voice rising over the deafening crowd noise. "Welcome to the Wanda Metropolitano. An amphitheater of suffering. Diego Simeone's fortress. He thrives in this chaos, but stepping into the Lions' den tonight is a Manchester United side reborn, led by a young manager. 1. It's the ultimate clash of styles," Peter, Beglin added. "Simeone, the master of the dark arts, the veteran of European wars. Against Marcus Vale, the 27-year-old who has turned United into a highly disciplined, pragmatic machine. Something has to give tonight. Let us look at the starting lineups," Drury said as the graphics flashed across the screen. For the home side, it is the familiar, suffocating shape of Atletico. Jan Oblak in goal. A back three of Savic, Gimenez and Reinildo. Versaljaco and Lodi providing the width. Kondogbia, Herrera and Laurent clogging the midfield, with Angel Correa and the mercurial João Felix up front. And for Manchester United, Jim, Marcus Vale deploys his trusted shape, integrating his new winter signings immediately into the European fray. It's a 4-4-2 diamond, Peter, Beglin analysed. David De Gea in goal. Kieran Trippier makes a swift return to his old club at right back, alongside Raphael Varane, Harry Maguire and Alex Telles. Dennis Zakaria sits at the base of the midfield to provide the physical shield. Donny van de Beek and Bruno Fernandes are the shuttling eights, with Jadon Sancho at the tip. And a mouth-watering front two, Paulo Dybala partnering the man Atletico fans fear most, Cristiano Ronaldo. The teams emerge from the tunnel, Drury announced, his voice carrying the grandeur of the occasion. The boy manager meets the man in black. Marcus Vale and Diego Simeone shake hands on the touchline. The pleasantries are brief. The battle lines are drawn. The referee blew his whistle. The roar from the stadium was deafening. Manchester United took the kickoff, but the ball was instantly launched forward. Exactly as Marcus had predicted, Atletico Madrid came out like rabid dogs. Within 30 seconds, Jeffrey Kondogbia smashed into Donny van de Beek with a heavy, bruising challenge, leaving the Dutchman on the turf. The referee waved play on, setting a lenient, physical tone for the evening. 2 minutes later, Ronaldo flew down the left wing, whipping a dangerous cross into the box that Varane had to desperately head clear. In the 4th minute, Atletico nearly found their breakthrough. Correa picked up a loose ball on the edge of the box and fired a low, driven shot through a crowd of bodies. David De Gea saw it late, dropping to his right with lightning reflexes to push the ball just past the post. The resulting corner was whipped into the 6-yard box. Jose Gimenez leaped into the air, looking to wrestle his marker to the ground. But the lessons from Carrington's new grappling coach paid off instantly. Harry Maguire didn't grab Gimenez's shirt or panic, he smoothly lowered his center of gravity, slipped the zonal block using his hips perfectly, and powered the ball away with a commanding defensive header. The clearance fell to the edge of the penalty area. Kondogbia looked to gather the loose ball and bully his way back into the box. Dennis Zakaria didn't let him. The massive Swiss midfielder stepped up and delivered a crushing, shoulder-to-shoulder challenge. Kondogbia bounced off him and fell to the turf. Zakaria collected the ball calmly, asserting physical dominance in the center of the pitch. A frantic, ferocious start from the Spanish champions. Drury exclaimed. But United are standing firm. They are meeting the challenge head-on. In the 6th minute, the relentless early pressure from Atletico presented the exact scenario Marcus had prepared for. Atletico's wing-backs, Lodi and Vrsaljko, were pushed high up the pitch, operating essentially as wingers to pin Telles and Trippier back. Hector Herrera received the ball in the center circle. He looked up and spotted João Felix dropping cleverly into the pocket of space between Dennis Zakaria and the United defensive line. Herrera threaded a firm, disguised pass toward the young Portuguese forward. Harry Maguire, following his manager's pre-match instructions to the letter, did not wait for Felix to receive the ball. The United captain stepped aggressively out of the defensive line, anticipating the pass with perfect timing. Maguire intercepted the ball cleanly, stepping right through Felix's shadow. Without taking a second touch, Maguire instantly punched a firm pass forward to Bruno Fernandes in the center circle. The transition trap was sprung. Because Lodi had pushed so high up the pitch to join the attack, the entire right side of the Atletico defensive half was completely empty. Paulo Dybala, who had been dropping deep to link play, recognized the gaping void instantly. The Argentine forward spun and sprinted directly into the vacant space on the right wing. Bruno didn't hesitate. He looked up and swept a magnificent, low, raking pass across the damp grass, hitting Dybala perfectly in stride. Dybala took the ball down with a flawless, velvet touch on his left foot. He drove aggressively toward the edge of the penalty area. Gimenez was forced to sprint out of the center to close him down. In the middle, Jadon Sancho made a hard, decoy run toward the near post, dragging Ronaldo with him. And on the left side of the pitch, the Predator waited. Cristiano Ronaldo, who had deliberately drifted wide left to separate himself from the play, suddenly ignited. With Savic caught ball watching, Ronaldo darted violently into the center of the penalty box, arriving in the blind spot behind the scrambling Atletico defense. Dybala looked up, spotted the movement, and clipped a beautiful, curling cross over Gimenez's outstretched leg. The ball fell perfectly into the center of the box. Ronaldo didn't even need to break his stride. He met the cross with a precise, clinical, side-footed volley, redirecting the ball past Jan Oblak before the goalkeeper could even move his feet. Cristiano Ronaldo.
Drury roared, his voice echoing with iconic grandeur. Inevitable. Inexorable. The ultimate scourge of Atletico Madrid strikes again. A breathtaking, lightning-fast counter-attack, and Marcus Vale's Manchester United have silenced the Metropolitano in 6 minutes. 2. The deafening wall of noise inside the stadium vanished instantly. It was completely silenced, pierced only by the roar of the small pocket of travelling United fans high up in the away end, and the loud, echoing shout of Su. As Ronaldo leaped by the corner flag. It is a tactical masterstroke, Peter, Beglin analysed, watching the replay as Dybala, Sancho and Bruno swarmed the goal-scorer. Simeone commits his wing-backs forward to get the early goal. Vale knows this. Maguire wins the ball, and Dybala immediately exploits the space Lodi left behind. But the movement from Ronaldo, drifting wide, waiting in the shadows, and arriving with that lethal timing. It's devastating. Down in the dugout, Marcus Vale didn't jump or pump his fists. He simply pulled his hands out of his coat pockets, offered a brief, satisfied clap, and sat back down, picking up his red magnet. 1. On the touchline, Diego Simeone was the exact opposite. The Argentine manager was pacing like a caged tiger, his face flushed with fury. Dressed entirely in black, he waved his arms frantically, screaming at his players in rapid Spanish. The early blitz had failed completely. United hadn't broken under the pressure, they had absorbed the dark arts and sliced Atletico open with a single, surgical strike. 1. Simeone immediately began gesturing for his team to calm down, instructing them to drop back into their familiar, compact defensive shape. Conceding 1 goal was bad, conceding 2 would be a disaster. The high-pressing start was abandoned. With the 1-0 lead secured and goal in the bank, Manchester United completely